Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Today morning, in the first session from 9 to 12, the GS paper 3 covering the economics, ecology and environment, science and technology and disaster management and internal security, covering these subjects, the paper was conducted by the Union Public Service Commission. In today's session, let's have a discussion regarding all the questions which have been asked and what is the answer, model answer for all of these 20 questions. So let me begin with the economic questions here. Before I start the discussion, here is a very important pointer. As I'm sure all of you know this, the first 10 questions are for a 10 marker and the next 10 questions are a 15 marker. Because the 15 marker questions are much more important, I'll start the discussion with the 15 marker questions and then go on to the 10 marker questions. So let me start with the question number 11 here. Discuss the merits and the demerits of 4 labour codes in the context of labour market reforms in India. What has been the progress so far in this regard? A 250 word question and a 15 marker. Now what are the important points? The government of India back in the year 2019 and 2020 proposed to rationalize the labour laws in India, because mind you, the labour as a subject falls in the concurrent list. That is, essentially the state governments are allowed to form laws on the subject and the central government is also allowed to form laws on the subject. As a result of this kind of, let's say, the provision in the Constitution of India, there was a point of time wherein there were more than 100 labour laws in India. And one of the reasons why we were not able to attract a lot of investment, especially from the foreign market along with the domestic market, was said to be the outdated, the complicated labour laws in India. In fact, one of the author writes regarding the labour laws, if you want to implement 100% of the labour laws of a government, you might end up violating 20% of the labour laws of the other government. That was the variability or the variation in terms of provisions and the complexity in terms of the different number and the sheer number of labour laws in India. So looking at this particular situation, the union government decided, let me rationalize the labour laws in India. And what did the government of India do? The government took more than 30 labour laws and simply rationalized all these 30 plus labour laws into 4 labour codes. It rationalized all these 30 plus labour laws into 4 labour codes. The 4 are: 1. Occupational safety, health and working conditions, the code on wages, the code on social security and the industrial relations code. And if you look at all the 4 codes, you will realize the years written are either 2019 or 2020, which essentially means the center has passed all of these laws through the parliament. Now we are yet to notify the final implementation. I repeat, we are yet to notify the final implementation of all the 4 labour codes. Now, what are the merits and demerits of these labour laws or the 4 labour codes? Let me have a discussion regarding the merits as well as the demerits. What are the merits? Earlier, multiple labour laws in India. Central government also had huge number of labour laws. Now, with the introduction of 4 labour codes, the number of labour laws have actually come down. So, the ease of implementation of these labour laws will improve. A company or a manufacturing unit doesn't have to abide by multiple provisions now, multiple, let's say, the laws, right, will be lesser, easier to implement the labour laws. Point number 1. Point number 2, many of these labour laws were made after independence in India. After independence, for example, Factories Act 1948. The problem with these kind of labour laws is that the situation or the scenario in Indian economy at the time of independence was different and currently the situation is completely different. For example, back in 1948, Government of India came out with the concept of industrial policy, which was restructured and a new policy was announced in 1956. Only after 1991, the Government of India opened up most of the sectors in the Indian economy for private sector participation as well as foreign participation in India. So, logically, the situation in Indian economy at, let's say, 1950s and 1960s was different compared to what is the situation in India today. So, we need to have certain labor laws which will basically represent the current environment in the Indian economy. That's the second reason or the second advantage or a merit of restructuring or revamping of labor laws by the government. Third one, in some of these labor laws, the women will have, let's say, certain powers. And when I say powers here, listen to me carefully. There is a concept of a night shift. There is this idea of a night shift. Under the proposal which has been put forward in these labor codes now, the women shall decide whether they want to be part of the night shifts in India or not. Because historically, if you see, the night shift work is generally reserved for the male population or the male workers, and generally the female workers are prohibited or not allowed to work under the night shift. That is one more advantage or a merit. It will help in empowering women workers in India. And this is an important point for a simple reason. In the last couple of years, there is always a concern regarding participation of women in the labor market. For example, very often in the newspaper, you will come across the female labor force participation rate, LFPR, female labor force participation rate. In fact, there is a report of the World Bank which states that in certain number of years when India achieved a very high GDP growth rate, for example, post 2000, when India achieved a very high growth rate in the GDP, those are the same years when there is a huge decline in the female labor force participation rate as well. So, we need to promote more and more female LFPR, and that will automatically help in empowerment of the women, and one of the steps towards that is essentially the concept of labor codes providing certain benefits or having certain provisions in favor of women. Extending the benefits even to the informal sector. What do you mean by this? Generally, whenever you talk about the labor in India, we divide the labor into the one which works in the formal segment and the second one which works in informal segment, informal labor per se. And the problem regarding the informal labor is that many of the benefits which are provided to the full-time labor, a full-time worker or a formal worker, many of these benefits are not extended to these contractual laborers or informal laborers or the term gig workers. The concept is not extended, that is the benefits are not extended, many of them are not extended to gig workers. Now, there is a code on social security. Multiple provisions in the code mandate that some of these benefits will get extended even to the informal labor. So, these kinds of merits you can associate with the concept of the labor codes which have been proposed, passed by the union government, yet to be notified. What is the issue? I will come to that. So, what are the demerits associated with these 4 labor codes then? First one, lot of the provisions in these labor codes are capitalistic in nature, and that is said to be one of the primary reasons why even today, after 3 to 4 years of passage of these labor codes, there is yet to be a consensus between the central government, state government and the trade unions or the labor union. Many of these provisions have basically tried to protect the interest of the employer. These provisions have been made in order to protect the interest of the employer. That is essentially capitalistic in nature. So, many of the trade unions are opposed to the provisions. Many of the state governments are not in the same page or not on the same page regarding the provisions. So, one, capitalistic in nature provisions. Second one, we are yet to have consensus from all the stakeholders. Basically, the process is simple here. Whenever a labor code is made or a labor law is made by the center, the states will have to basically prepare the guidelines, the rules which will be used to implement the labor codes. Many of the states have prepared the let's say rules, and many of the states are yet to prepare the rules. In fact, before the Lok Sabha elections, in fact, one of the areas that the government of India was basically talking about was the implementation of labor codes after the government would be elected. That is, within the first 100 days, we have completed the 100 days of a new government, by the way. Within the first 100 days, one of the very important areas of focus will be the implementation of labor codes. So, argument is simple here. The states are yet to formulate, many of them are yet to formulate the rules which will be used to implement the labor codes in India. So, that is basically the consensus, lack of consensus. Third one, there are certain problematic provisions. For example, some of provisions will provide the power to the manufacturer or the employer wherein they can easily hire and fire the employees. They can easily hire and fire the employees. And many of the experts basically say, if these kind of provisions are implemented, then the manufacturers can easily remove the employees according to their requirement. But on one side, please understand, on one side, these kind of provisions are needed. Manufacturers will simply say, if the demand is lesser in the market, I should be given the power to remove employees. On one side, from the manufacturing viewpoint, this is a good provision. But having said so, look at the employees side as well. One of the reasons we are worried about Indian economy is the issue of unemployment rate. Sufficient number of jobs are not getting generated. Indian economy is experiencing a jobless growth phenomenon. The investments are becoming too much of capital intensive investments, etc., etc. In that particular situation, if the power for easy hiring and easy firing is given to the employers, these employers might remove a large number of workers, which might further have an impact on the employment growth rate in India. As such, the concern is already there regarding employment growth rate. This might add further problem to the issue itself. Finally, some of the provisions in these 4 labor codes will reduce the powers of trade unions, will reduce the negotiation power of the trade unions as well as the rights of the workers. For example, until now, there is a discussion regarding right of the workers to go for strike. But now under the new labor codes, provisions have been implemented using which the right to strike can be curtailed, can be contained. What about the trade unions? Generally, the trade unions or the labor unions play a very important role in negotiating with the management in terms of salary hike. But if the new labor codes are implemented, the new labor codes will also provide certain facilities where the companies can treat a contractual worker or a fixed term employee on the same lines with a full-time employee. So, the companies might start hiring more and more fixed term contract workers by paying, let's say, the similar amount of salary, which will essentially ensure now the labor union or the trade union cannot effectively negotiate with the employer in terms of revision of the salaries. So, these are some of the demerits or issues which are associated with the 4 labor codes. Now, what is the status? What has been the progress so far in this particular regard? The laws have been implemented, that is passed in the parliament, approved by the president, but these are yet to be notified for the final implementation. These are yet to be implemented, right, because some of the states, some of the stakeholders are not on board with many of the provisions under the labor codes. So, these are certain points which you can use to write an effective answer for question number 11. Let me go to question number 12 now. What is the need for expanding the regional air connectivity in India? In this context, to discuss the government's UDAN scheme and its achievements. 250 words, 15 marker question. What is the need to expand regional connectivity? What is the logic behind it? Why should the government go for expansion of regional connectivity? Point number 1, listen to me carefully. The government of India over a period of time has promoted reforms in the civil aviation market. There was a point of time when only government of India through Air India is to provide the civil aviation services. But the government has opened up the market after 1991 and has allowed for private sector participation. In fact, at different levels within the civil aviation market, even FDI, either in the form of a greenfield project or a brownfield project, up to certain levels, up to certain threshold limit, it is allowed. But the problem has been that despite implementing so many reforms in the civil aviation market, the demand for the civil aviation is mainly concentrated in cities. The demand for the civil aviation market or the civil aviation services, the concentration of the demand of this is present in the cities. But if you look at the 2011 census data, around 67% of India's population resides in villages. So there is a huge market which is available in the rural part of India. That is again not even all the villages, I am not even talking about villages. If you talk about cities itself, for example, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, there is a huge population which is residing in all of these regions. But the airports which are constructed there, either these are underserved, these are either underserved or unserved. These are underserved or unserved. So government of India looked at all of this, and the data simply shows that hardly around 2% of the total population in India, hardly around 2% of total population in India is able to access the market of civil aviation. So back in the year 2016, government essentially introduced the concept of National Civil Aviation Policy, National Civil Aviation Policy, NCAP. And under this National Civil Aviation Policy of 2016, government introduced a new initiative by the name of Regional Connectivity Scheme, RCS, Regional Connectivity Scheme. Other name for this is also Udan Scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, Udan Scheme. So what are the reasons why should government promote air connectivity in the regional parts of India? Point number one, it needs to ensure more and more population will be able to get access to such services. The demand for these will not get concentrated only within the cities. Point number one. Point number two, lot of money has been spent in developing infrastructure. For example, airport construction. Right, in some of the cities, tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, there will be airports. Although these airports are smaller compared to, let's say, a larger city on the lines of, let's say, Delhi, New Delhi, or Bangalore airport for that matter, or Hyderabad airport for that matter. No doubt, the tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities have a smaller airport. But the amount of money that has been already spent on, right, let's say, construction of this airport, maintenance and the development of this airport, it's not a small amount. So government of India says, if the airport infrastructure is already present, why don't I promote an initiative? Why do I not provide certain benefits to ensure civil aviation services will be provided from these airports as well? That is the second reason. Third reason, in order to promote economic activity in these particular regions as well. To promote economic activities, because mind you, there are certain regions in India which has a very good economic potential. For example, tourism potential, agriculture production potential, etc. But because the connectivity of this region with other parts of India is poor, because the connectivity is weaker, this potential we are not able to tap it. Let me give you a very simple example. Lot of agriculture commodities are specifically cultivated in the northeastern parts of India. But because of the poor connectivity, or let's say because of the methods that we are using for transportation to the other parts of India, it will take a lot of time to get these crops into the other parts of India. From the northeastern part, lot of it will be destroyed. So why don't we start connectivity services In fact, Government of India has launched Krishi Udan services, by the way. Please remember this. Government of India has already initiated Krishi Udan services to provide connectivity to the northeastern parts and other hilly regions, etc., which will help us in transportation of agriculture commodities. So, tourism potential can be promoted. Agriculture sector transportation of the commodities can be promoted. And when lot of, let's say, services will started to be provided, when lot of these services will be provided from this region to other region, people, right, let's say transportation will increase or the movement of the people will increase. When more and more people will enter into these regions via civil aviation policy or through civil aviation, the demand for the goods and services will increase. Demand for the restaurant services will increase. The other transportation services will increase. That will promote economic activity in the other regions as well. In addition to this, various regional players are present in India. Small regional players to provide civil aviation, they are present. They cannot compete with larger service providers. For example, Indigo, it is present throughout India. But at the same point of time, there are very small regional service providers as well. So, we will be providing the Udan initiative, will be promoting the growth of these small air carriers by launching an initiative on the lines of regional connectivity scheme. Right. So, these are some of the very important reasons citing which Government of India is promoting regional connectivity. Now, what are the provisions, important points regarding Udan scheme? What are the important points? Government of India under Udan scheme, which was launched in 2016, and over a period of time, multiple iterations, Udan 2.0, 3.0, etc. has launched. Under this, the target will be the other cities, the tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities which require more connectivity, which require more access to civil aviation market. And to provide this, Government of India launched a fund, Regional Connectivity Fund. Government of India also provided Viability Gap Funding, VGF, Viability Gap Funding for many of these service providers who would be connecting these airports, underserved and unserved airports with other regions of India. So, what is the status of the Udan initiative as of now? Under the Udan initiative, more than 400 routes have been launched. In fact, last year, when the question regarding Udan initiative was raised in the parliament, the minister stated that although more than 400 routes have been launched under Udan, many of these routes have been discontinued by the air carriers. Many of them have been discontinued. The reason which was cited by the minister for this discontinuation is the pandemic and post-pandemic situation in the civil aviation market. Because the assistance that is provided by the government, for example, VGF, Viability Gap Funding, is not unlimited. It is not till perpetuity. It is for a limited number of years, for example, 3 years. So, once the 3-year duration is over, the pandemic is still having impact in the market. Civil aviation market is yet to recover. Demand is yet to go back to the earlier situation. As a result of all of this, many of these regional carriers under Udan initiative, they have discontinued the services. They have discontinued the services. In fact, under the Udan initiative, Government of India's objective was to ensure that the air travel becomes affordable. The air travel becomes affordable, right? How? Under the Udan, the government wanted to ensure that the air carriers which are covered under the scheme will be selling 50% of the seats at subsidized prices. That is for a flight of 1 hour, if an aeroplane is covered under the Udan, through aeroplane when you travel, the ticket price will be 2,500 rupees. And if helicopter services are provided under Udan, for 1 hour of travel, the pricing will be fixed at, right, let's say 5,000 rupees for certain number of seats. So, the whole objective was to ensure that the air travel becomes affordable. So, these are certain important points regarding Udan initiative. Okay, let me go forward with the question number 14 now. elucidate the importance of the buffer stock for stabilizing agriculture prices in India. What are the challenges associated with the storage of buffer stock? Discuss. Let me start the discussion now. What is the idea of a buffer stock? Please understand, buffer essentially means extra or additional stock. Extra or additional stock. What is this extra or additional stocks? The government of India is supposed to implement food security measures. For example, we have National Food Security Act. Under National Food Security Act, the government is supposed to procure, let's take a simple number, let's say 100 tons. If the government is supposed to procure through Food Corporation of India, if it is supposed to procure only 100 tons, instead of 100 tons, the government will end up procuring, let's say 120 tons. Mind you, the buffer stock limit is different for different crops in India. It is a different based on the time period in the calendar as well. That's the reason I am not telling you the exact numbers, not required. So, the argument of the government is, instead of simply procuring 100 tons, I will procure 120 tons. Why? Extra 20 tons, additional 20 tons will be considered as buffer stock. And mind you, the buffer stock is not just in relation of the food grains under NFSA. In recent times, Government of India has started procuring buffer stock of pulses, buffer stock of various vegetables, etc. in order to stabilize the prices, because the prices have become very much unstable, very much volatile. So, the Government of India has introduced the concept of a buffer stock, wherein more than what is actually required for distribution purposes are procured by the government through its agencies. What are the advantages of this? What are the, let's say, need for holding a buffer stock? Point number 1, using the buffer stock, government will be targeting price stabilization in the market. For example, you must have come across idea of open market sale scheme, OMSS, very much discussed in the last 1.5 years current affairs. Open market sale scheme. Using the tool of open market sale scheme, Government of India will ensure that sufficient food grains will be supplied in the market whenever there is a lesser supply. Whenever there is lesser supply of the food grains such as wheat and rice. So, Food Corporation of India has procured a lot of these crops, buffer stocks are there. If the prices are increasing because of a lesser supply, under the OMSS, these crops would be supplied in the market, increase the supply, stabilize the prices. Point number 1. Point number 2, the government will also ensure that they will have buffer stocks in order to continue to distribute food grains under different initiatives. For example, during pandemic, the Government of India under the Atmanirbhar Bharat package announced the initiative of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, which essentially provided additional, I repeat, additional 5 kgs of food grains in addition to whatever was the entitlement under the NFSA. So, obviously now Government of India would be requiring more amount of a food grain. They would want to draw certain food grain from the buffer stocks. So, ensuring public distribution of the food grains. Continuous supply of food grains or agriculture crops to ensure the common man would not be affected by scarcity in the market. Protecting the interest of the farmers. Imagine if all of us are farmers and if all of us cultivate a crop and take it to the market, supply suddenly will increase. If government doesn't procure part of it because of NFSA, because of the PDS, because of the buffer stock, because of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, etc., supply would be much higher, prices would be very low. So, because government will procure additional food grains in the form of buffer stock, the supply in the market is contained, supply in the beginning part after harvesting. And finally, it will also ensure the farmers or agriculture growth in these particular regions. In the regions, otherwise the farmers If they are only dependent on the market price, they would simply leave the cultivation of the crops because the prices are very volatile. But the government procuring the buffer stocks in addition to the normal procurement, it will ensure that cultivation of the crops will continue to happen in the region, agriculture growth will take place. So, these are some of the reasons, or let us say the need for having buffer stock norms. Having said so, what are the concerns or challenges here? What are the issues or challenges? Point number 1, if government rather than procuring 100 tons will procure 120 tons, don't you think government of India's expenditure will be much higher here? It has to pay higher amount of money. Of course, yes. So, revenue deficit will increase, fiscal deficit will increase, borrowings of government of India will start increasing. And earlier cases, of course, now government of India is trying to discontinue that, right, and it is promoting even the state governments to follow the suit. Earlier, the government of India, to control the fiscal deficit, would basically ask Food Corporation of India to borrow from NSSF, National Small Savings Funds. And this would basically lead to essentially the concept of off-budget borrowing, further imposing pressure, financial pressures on the government of India in the later years. So, one, expenditure is a concern here. Second, whenever food grains are procured more than what is required, you require warehousing, you require storage, and as such in case of India, we do not have sufficient warehousing. Overall warehousing shortage, warehousing of FCI also shortage. So, now government of India has to basically through FCI lease out the private sector warehouses, which essentially will mean that the expenditure for warehousing or the storage will also be higher. Point number 3, if food grains are stored and we do not go for a scientific warehousing, we will simply go for, let us say, the coverage and plinth, although this is very, very less now, negligible, but anyways, if you do not go for a scientific storage because we do not have sufficient storage, lot of food grains will be rotten, lot of food grains we will end up losing it. Fourth one, if food grains are procured, in addition to the normal one, buffer stocks are procured, there can be diversion of these particular food grains. There can be leakages in the system where the food grains will be, right, let us say looted or basically taken from the godowns and sold in the open market without the knowledge of the government. Right. So, I hope you understand these are some of the issues or concerns. In addition to this, one more issue or concern is the WTO norms, World Trade Organization norms. Under the concept of agreement on agriculture, many developed countries such as USA already criticized government of India for having MSP policy, for having a policy of trade distortion. Now, if you are maintaining a buffer stock, does it not mean you are paying more amount of MSP? Again, you will basically be in the line of fire or in the sight of basically the other countries such as USA, which will further take this point and criticize you. So, these are some of the issues or challenges associated with the concept of buffer stock. Okay. Now, let me start with question number 1, right. So, 3 questions in 15 marker covered. Let me cover questions, right, of 10 markers. Examine the pattern and trend of public expenditure on social services in the post-reform period in India. To what extent this has been in consonance with achieving the objective of inclusive growth. Point number 1, please understand, the question is asking you about post-1991 reforms. What has changed in the approach of government of India in promoting social welfare, that is the pattern of allocation, etc. In addition to this, the question is asking you, is this pattern sufficient for us to achieve inclusive growth? What is the idea for inclusive growth? According to the World Bank, the inclusive growth refers to the pace and pattern, of growth, the pace as well as the pattern of growth. Essentially, the World Bank is saying it focuses on the growth, GDP growth as well as the economic development. Both of them are connected to each other, both of them should be promoted together by the government. That is the concept of inclusive growth. Now, understand this carefully. If you look at the history of allocation of the funds, or let's say social welfare measures by Government of India before 1991 through various 5-year plans, For example, 4th 5-year plan, 5th 5-year plan, 6th 5-year plan, etc. You will see Government of India is taking various measures, various schemes are being implemented to promote welfare, to promote development in the regional part. For example, government implemented 20-point program, government implemented minimum needs program, government implemented integrated rural development program, right? Government implemented the Swarojgar Yojana, Gram Swarojgar Yojana, right? So, different types of initiatives were implemented by the government before 1991. But after 1991, what has changed? What has changed in terms of the pattern as well as the trend of the public expenditure? Listen to me carefully. After the liberalization, after the reforms period, the Government of India, point number 1, has increased the absolute expenditure that shall be allocated for different initiatives or different measures used to promote welfare in India. That is social welfare measures. In terms of allocation of funds for education, in terms of allocation of funds for let's say medical expenditure or medical infrastructure, etc., the allocation of funds, absolute allocation of the funds has improved. It has increased, no doubt regarding that. Point number 2, many of the schemes, I will come back to this slide, don't worry. Many of the schemes which were implemented earlier, the Government of India has gone for consolidation of the schemes and revamping of these particular schemes. Over a period of time, you must have seen many of these schemes which were being implemented by different agencies now have been consolidated, have been revamped for better approach, better, let's say, targeting of the beneficiaries, better outcomes, etc. Point number 3, in order to promote inclusive growth, in order to promote social welfare, one of the segments in the Indian economy or Indian society is women. What has the Government of India done in terms of women's welfare post 1991? From the year 2005 and 6, Government of India introduced the concept of gender budgeting. They used a concept or introduced the concept of gender budgeting. And under this idea of a gender budgeting, Government of India has been allocating huge amount of money. Successively, the allocations have kept on increasing in every 5-year plans, at least in the last 5 years. Every annual budgets, not 5-year plans, in every union budget in the last 5 years, the absolute allocation under the union budget for women empowerment or women equity promotion has increased. And not only this, the government has also been promoting the utilization of technology. It has been promoting the concept of the adoption of technology to provide these kind of services for promotion of social welfare. For example, many of the schemes either wherein the direct subsidies are provided or indirect subsidies are provided, or cash component is provided or kind component is provided. More than 300 schemes, mind you, have been brought under the ambit of DBT, direct benefit transfer. And DBT is not the only example where technology is basically leveraged by the government. You must have heard of PFMS as well, Public Financial Management System, wherein the Government of India has integrated the PFMS with the DBT to ensure that the funds are transferred easily to the beneficiaries. There is a tracking, real-time data is available, etc., etc. So, this is generally what has been done by the government post reforms in order to change the methodology, change the patterns of allocation of expenditure to basically promote social welfare. But having said so, even today we face certain challenges, we face certain issues here. One, despite using so many reforms, so many methods, so many policies over a period of time, even today in certain cases there is a concern regarding leakages. There is an issue regarding leakages. Though Government of India has tried to plug these leakages through different measures. Very recently, for example, in one of the central government schemes which would provide wages for 100 days, etc., there was found to be an issue of a leakages there, right? So I hope you understand the argument here. Even today, there is an issue of leakages, whether the funds are being utilized correctly for giving benefits to the beneficiaries or not. Point number one. Point number two, even today, many of these schemes do not target the right beneficiaries. They are universal in nature. They are universal in nature. For example, whenever you talk about subsidies, the experts will introduce the concept of railway subsidization, electricity subsidies, fertilizer subsidies, etc., where we do not provide any kind of a targeting, or we do not provide the subsidies only for the right beneficiaries. There is always bound to be higher government expenditure, but because of such subsidies or such measures, the efficiency of the scheme would be affected. For example, the free electricity for the farmers. Many of the states which provide this free electricity to the farmers, in these states we have seen a declining underground water levels. It's a cause of concern, by the way. In addition to this, multiple schemes are implemented. For the schemes, funds are allocated in the union budget, but the fund allocated doesn't necessarily mean, I hope you understand, doesn't necessarily mean all the funds are utilized by the government, by the, let's say, departments. In many of the schemes, the funds are unutilized, and at the end of the financial year, the funds will be returned back to the consolidated fund of India. So utilization rates is also a limitation or a challenge under many of the schemes, right? So this is these are some of the challenges which are associated with, right, the public expenditure management policies that have been implemented by the government over a period of time. So what is the way forward finally? One, government has to further leverage digital technologies. For example, government is promoting the concept of digital public infrastructure, the concept of a JAM initiative, Janadhan, Aadhaar and Mobile Trinity, right, etc., etc. So many of these digital technologies or digital infrastructure, I am reminded even of the latest example, AgriStack, which is being proposed by the government for implementation. So many of these digital public infrastructures have to be developed and used efficiently for providing the services using which we can promote welfare, social welfare across India. Second one, basically we will have to develop lot of social infrastructure as well, healthcare infrastructure, or for that matter, let's say education infrastructure. And finally, in many of the schemes, like I told just now or some time ago, we need to revamp the scheme for better targeting, better, right, let's say targeting of the initiatives. We need to revamp the initiatives. Done. So these are the challenges. I have just given you a table here, not required for civil services, but what is the point you need to focus here? How much is the expenditure? How much is the expenditure that is that has been done by the government as a percentage of GDP in providing social services in the last 6 years here, and right, basically it is as a percentage of total expenditure. What you will observe, and you should have used this data, what you will observe is the percentage, that is the total expenditure as a percentage of GDP is basically fluctuating between 6% to 8%. And within that, if you talk about, let's say, education or healthcare for that matter, it is below 2%. If you compare that with many other countries, for example, within the BRICS economies, take China for that matter, their expenditure on healthcare is much higher, more than 3%, more than 3.5%, etc. like this. So we need to ramp it up, we need to increase it, right? And even the total expenditure, out of the total expenditure, you will see that it is in the range of 25% to 26%, range of 25 to 26% for majority period of the time, which essentially again means what? We need to ramp up the total expenditure for providing social welfare services, right, in order to promote inclusive growth over a period of time. In addition to this, I have given one more set of data here. If you have written some of these particular points, definitely yes, you will be able to fetch very good number of marks. That is, what measures have been implemented which will basically talk about inclusive growth in India. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Basically under this, more than 53 crore accounts have been opened. and a lot of them are women, right? Let's say the accounts for women only, which will basically help us in promotion of women empowerment along with inclusive growth. Ujjwala Yojana, more than 10 crore beneficiaries have been covered under Ujjwala Yojana. Swachh Bharat Mission, more than 11 crore beneficiaries are covered under, let's say, more than 11 crore toilets have been constructed under Swachh Bharat Mission, etc., etc. So, you should have used some of these particular points to improve the quality of your answer. Now, some of you will be saying, sir, where do I get all of this information from? Where do I get all of this information from? Economic survey and budget documents. These are the authentic government documents, authentic sources and published by the government. So, more authentic you cannot get it compared to this. Okay. Question number 2. What are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of RBI to control this type of inflation. 150 words at 10 marker question. Now, what are the factors which have caused high food inflation or right, a stubborn food inflation? RBI uses the term stubborn inflation, because if you have seen in the last couple of, let's say, years, the headline inflation has been fluctuating. It has increased during the pandemic and post pandemic, and now it is right around the target of 4%. And RBI is confident that they will be bringing it under control to around much closer to 4%, because that is the inflation target given to RBI. But having said so, RBI consistently will be flagging the issue of food inflation in India. It will keep on flagging the issue of food inflation in India. It has kept on flagging the issue of food inflation. Now, what are the reasons? What are the causes behind the persistent high food inflation in India, and how effective is the monetary policy? Let's understand this. Point number 1. What are the factors that are causing food inflation, consistently high food inflation in India? Point number 1. The biggest culprit has to be MSP. The biggest culprit has to be the minimum support price, MSP. How so? Under the MSP, when the survey was conducted, when the analysis was conducted, it has been observed that the farmers who cultivate cereals and sell them under MSP, their rate of returns is much higher compared to the farmers who cultivate the crops such as pulses and oilseeds and sell it. Point is very simple. The government announces MSP for more than 20 crops, but majority of the procurement is surrounding the rice and wheat, that is paddy and wheat. So, the farmers, when they cultivate it, sell it to the government, the highest amount of returns they will earn on their investment there compared to when they cultivate other crops and sell it. So, obviously, as a farmer, I will focus more and more on cultivation of cereals, and when I focus more and more on cultivation of cereals, what will happen to cultivation of pulses in India? What do you think will happen to cultivation of oil seeds in India? So, the cultivation of other crops would be lesser, and when the cultivation of other crops will come down, the demand is generally there in the market, the supply is lesser, demand is higher, prices will start increasing. Prices of these crops will start increasing. That contributes to food inflation. This contributes to food inflation. First one. Second one, some of you will be of the opinion, okay, if there is a lesser supply of these crops, we will import them. We can address the issue of the inflation by importing them. There is a problem regarding this as well. When you import, let's say, the edible oil from the external market, when you import pulses from the external market, if rupee is depreciating, imports will become costlier. If the exporting country is exporting this at a higher price, which is generally the case, for example, the import of edible oils that we end up doing from other Asian economies, such as Malaysia, you will have to end up paying higher amount of money because they are racking up the prices. So, the prices of the imports as well as the exchange rate fluctuation will also contribute to food inflation in India. Point number 3, the input cost, higher input cost. Let me connect it to current affairs. in the last couple of years, the milk prices have kept on increasing. The milk inflation has been observed. Why? What is the background to this? For the production of milk, you require fodder. You require to supply fodder to the animals here. If the price of the fodder keeps on increasing, and this has happened in the last 2 years, with higher prices of the fodder, input prices will increase, and when the input prices will increase, automatically the output will also be sold at a higher price. That will contribute to rise in the price levels of agriculture commodities or food products in the market, contributing to food inflation. In addition to this, of course, one of the other points regarding why there is a consistent food inflation in India is also consumption patterns. In the domestic market, historically if you see, with rising incomes, the people in India on an average have changed their consumption patterns. And because of the change in the consumption pattern, the demand for certain food commodities in the market generally is higher, and this contributes to food inflation in India. In addition to this, right, one more factor, very important factor by the way, is the severity of the heat waves that we have experienced in recent years, or the uneven, unseasonal rainfall as well. For example, in recent years, or especially in the last couple of cycles, we have experienced El Nino followed by La Nina, and whenever there is uneven rainfall or unseasonal rainfall because of this, automatically the production would be affected, supply would be affected. This is best exhibited in case of vegetable inflation, such as prices of onion shooting up, prices of tomato shooting upwards. Right. So, these are some of the reasons which have contributed to consistently high food inflation in the domestic market. In fact, in addition to this, you can even write the commodity futures. Although there is a control on the commodity futures now, because we have banned some of these commodity futures, the speculation in the futures market, that is commodity futures market, can also contribute to inflation, that is a food inflation. But again I am saying, we have put a ban on many of these commodity futures trading in India. So, this is basically first part of the answer. What are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of RBI to control this type of inflation. Listen to me carefully. Reserve Bank of India, using its tools, can mainly control demand side inflation. It can mainly control demand side inflation. It is not very effective in terms of controlling the cost push inflation. Reason being, the tools which are there with RBI, such as repo, reverse repo, standing deposit facility, CRR, SLR, etc., these tools will help RBI to either increase money supply or decrease money supply. And with the change in the money supply, that is increase or decrease, the interest rates in the market will change, and that will have a huge impact on the demand side of the market. So, the effectiveness of the monetary policy tools of Reserve Bank of India is limited to controlling the demand side factors in the inflation pattern or inflation chain. What about the supply side factors? It is not under the control of RBI. Here, the most important role has to be played by Government of India. It has to be played by Government of India. If I want to give you one example in recent times, couple of days ago, Government of India has increased the tariffs, has increased the import duties on edible oils which are imported into India. Now, the effective rate has been increased to 27.5%. With this particular hike in the import duties, and point number 2, we being import dependent on edible oils, don't you think the prices of the imported commodities, that is edible oils, automatically will be increased by the sellers? And when they increase, don't you think that will contribute to the food inflation in India? Done. So, the effectiveness of Reserve Bank of India's monetary policy is very limited in controlling the supply side inflation. The government has to play a dominant role here. Question number 3, what were the factors responsible for the successful implementation of land reforms in some parts of the country? Elaborate, right, a 10-marker question. Now, please understand, immediately after the independence, Government of India from 1951 introduced 5-year plans, FYP, 5-year plans. And during the first 5-year plan itself, the focus of this 5-year plan was on the agriculture sector. It was on the agriculture sector. And what was the argument behind this? What was the background to this? After the partition took place, the Government of India realized that most of the population of pre-partition India is present in India. But a large chunk of agriculture land, very fertile land, productive land, has gone to Pakistan itself. So, Government of India realized that the poverty in case of India higher, food security issue, right, needs to be addressed. Though more than 70% of the GDP came from agriculture sector, sorry, more than 50% of GDP came from agriculture sector, and more than, right, let's say 70% of labor is involved in the agriculture sector, there was a high import dependence in India. And one of the reasons they basically said was land is not available for the farmers in India. One of the reasons, of course, multiple reasons are there, but one of the reasons was a farmer doesn't have a land to cultivate. Most of the land was getting concentrated or was concentrated within certain sections of the society, for example, zamindars at that point of time. And that is a precise reason after independence, the Government of India implemented multiple land reforms after that. We had abolition of zamindari system, we had tenancy reforms, we had land ceiling reforms. In fact, we also had a socially driven, let's say, land reform by the name of Bhudan movement, etc. So, multiple types of land reforms were implemented by the government after independence. Having said so, the land reforms which were implemented by the center were not effective in some of the states in terms of their implementation and were effective in certain regions of India. The question is asking you, what were the factors which are responsible for the successful implementation of land reforms in some parts of the country? The reasons behind the success of the land reforms in certain regions are: 1, the proactive nature of the state governments. At the time of independence, or let's say after independence, there were certain state governments or certain parties had formed the state government which believed in the communistic ideologies. Right? For example, the state of West Bengal, state of Kerala, etc. And these particular states, along with many other states of course, believed in redistribution of the land. And that is the precise reason you will see in some of these particular states, because of the proactiveness of the state government, these reforms were effectively implemented and the land reform implementation was very effective there. Second, of course, we have to give certain accolades, certain, right, let's say the appreciation to the central government as well, because the issue of land reforms was flagged even by the central government. Multiple land reforms have been implemented over a period of time, and in recent times also, it's not just after independence, recently also the Government of India has continued to implement land reforms in India. For example, the Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation, Resettlement Act of 2013, which is the main, let's say the act now, main piece of legislation which is helping us to acquire land. Of course, yes, concerns are there regarding that as well. Or for that matter, modernization of land records, right, program of the Union government, which is covered under Digital India now. Or for that matter, the most important recent initiative by the name of Swamitwa scheme, wherein the property cards or the land records are digitized and property cards are being given to the rural population, which can use this for mobilization of, let's say, the mobilization of the financing now. So no doubt central government also has played a very important role, and that is also one of the reason why the policies have been successful. Second one, third one, need for higher food production. The government realized we need to produce more food grains. Green revolution was implemented, and before that and during and after the green revolution as well, or the announcement of green revolution, many policies, the land reforms were implemented for tenancy rights, for imposing a ceiling on how much a land can be owned by individuals or a family, etc., etc. Right. The next one, cooperative farming was promoted by the state government. Even many of the states and center promoted the concept of a cooperative farming, which promoted more and more farmers coming together, pooling the resources and having higher production. And finally, the social reforms as well. For example, Bhudan movement. Right. So these kind of reforms which were implemented either by the government or were socially driven reforms, because of certain factors, have become successful in certain regions in India. Done. So easily using these particular points, you can easily write 150-word answer. Now before I hand over the discussion to Chetan sir, who will take up the discussion on questions which have appeared on internal security as well as a disaster management, let me give you certain observations. Is the question paper having questions from Indian economy? Is the questions difficult? I would simply say by and large, these are on the expected lines. For example, land reforms, nothing new. Concept of land reforms very often is asked in the UPSC mains. Agriculture sector, anything new? Absolutely no. Agriculture sector, again the focus, inclusive growth, infrastructure, yes, these are generally the areas which are focused by the UPSC. So if you ask me, is it let's say a kind of a question paper which has deviated from, let's say, the earlier trend, I would simply say by and large it has followed the trend. What are the important areas of UPSC in the mains examination? Again, they are focused on the same areas. So this is basically the discussion I wanted to have with you people regarding the questions from GS paper 3, which was conducted today morning, and the questions that I have covered are from the Indian economy part. Now I'll hand over the discussion to Chetan sir, who will continue the discussion. Thank you. Have a great day. Unacademy. Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English. Welcome to the paper discussion of GS Paper 3, which appeared in UPSC Mains 2024. So Sham sir has just completed the discussion and analysis of economy questions, and now I shall be taking up the discussion and analysis of questions from internal security and disaster management. So before we start, I have a request. If there are any students from our Plus and Iconic program or students who are part of our Quality Enrichment program or the Conquer Mains 2024 program, and if you guys benefited from the initiative, because a lot of questions that we have seen in GS 1, 2 and 3, they've appeared directly from what we had covered in classes. So if any of you benefited, do let us know in the comments. We would be more than happy to know that. And also, if you're liking these initiatives, do press the like button and also share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So let's begin with the discussion of questions that had appeared from internal security. As always, we got 4 questions from internal security amounting to 50 marks. 2 10-mark questions and 2 15-mark questions. So this has been the standard pattern. Question number 9 and 10 and 19 and 20. So let's discuss these questions. Let's start with question number 9. Explain how narco-terrorism has emerged as a serious threat across the country. Suggest suitable measures to counter narco-terrorism. A pretty straightforward, simple question. And this is something I have covered repeatedly in class and as well as in Conquer Mains sessions. So to write a good answer to any question, first you need to understand and comprehend what the question is asking. Always try to break down the question to make it simpler and easier for you. So if you read this question carefully, you will notice that there are 2 parts to the question. First, it's asking you to explain about narco-terrorism posing a threat to India's security. Second part of the question is asking you to discuss suitable measures to counter narco-terrorism. A pretty straightforward question. And also ensure that the answer has to be crisp and precise, because it's just for 10 marks. The word limit is 150. So let's see how you can approach the topic. But before that, please take a look at this screenshot from the Plus classes for internal security, where under the chapter on terrorism, I had explained and discussed the very same topic of narco-terrorism. How organized crime is linked with terrorist activities, especially drug production, drug trafficking, shares a direct link with terrorism and insurgency. And unfortunately for India, we are surrounded by 2 major drug production hubs. Now, this is what you need to explain. The question is specific to the impact of narco-terrorism on India's security. So you can start your answer with an introduction by talking about India's location between the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle. You can point out that India is deeply affected by narco-terrorism and the links between organized crime and terrorism. You can mention that to the western borders of India, as you can see here in the map, we have a region called the Golden Crescent covering Pakistan, Afghanistan and Iran, which is a global hub for drug production and drug trafficking. You can go on to illustrate how drugs from Afghanistan have been fueled into Punjab and Kashmir by Pakistan's state agencies and non-state actors who have smuggled and trafficked the drugs into Kashmir and Punjab to fuel terrorism against India. So that way you're clearly representing the threat that arises from drug production and drug trafficking and its connections with terrorism. Then you can talk about the eastern borders of India, the Golden Triangle region comprising of Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos and Thailand, how this is also a major hub of drug production and other criminal activities. And link that with Northeast insurgency, how Northeast insurgents have been able to derive support from the Golden Triangle. They not only get involved in drug smuggling and drug trafficking, but this allows them to access weapons because of the arms trafficking cartels that flourish in this region. So this fuels insurgency in Northeast India, and you need to bring out these cross-border factors. You need to explain how India is sandwiched between these 2 regions, which are hubs of narco-terror, and this spills over across the border into India. In the next part of your answer, in the second part of the answer, you can start discussing the measures needed to counter narco-terrorism. Because see, now you have given examples as well, how Punjab, Kashmir, Northeast India have been affected by narco-terror. Plus, you have explained the concept of the linkages between organized crime and terrorism. So first part of the answer is done.
In the second part of the answer, you can discuss the measures that India has been taking and what other measures can be taken. You need to mention the security forces and agencies which are responsible to tackle narco-terrorism. For example, the NCB, Narcotics Control Bureau, which enforces the NDPS Act, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. You can point out the role of border guarding forces and the importance of border security to plug drug trafficking, which fuels terrorism. So the role of border guarding forces like BSF, Assam Rifles becomes very, very critical to plug the gaps in these borders with Pakistan and Myanmar, right? So stress about border security, the need to strengthen intelligence gathering at the border so that we can tackle the menace of cross-border smuggling of drugs, which in turn fuels terrorist activities. Maybe you can add another example here. Point out that in recent years, Indian authorities have confiscated large consignment of drugs in Punjab, Kashmir and Northeast India, along with weapons which were meant for insurgent and terrorist organizations. You can use the example of drones flying over from Pakistan and dropping entire cache of weapons along with drugs and funds, which is used to fuel terrorist activities in India. Then point out the role of the Navy and Coast Guard as well. Because across Indian Ocean region, the drug cartels, they resort to trafficking of drugs through the sea route as well. From the Golden Crescent, drugs are trafficked towards India, West Asia and Africa. From Golden Triangle, the drugs are trafficked either to India or towards Southeast Asian markets through the sea route. So this is where Navy, Coast Guard play a big role in maritime security. They have intercepted several drug consignments which were meant for terrorist activities. So these are the measures India has been taking and suggest how else we can strengthen India's fight against narco-terrorism. And that completes your answer. Now let's look at question number 10. This question is related to the topic of data privacy and data protection. And in fact, the topic is a repeat topic. Back in 2018, UPSC had already asked a question on data security, data privacy. Back then, the government had constituted a committee, Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee, to provide recommendations for a data protection law in the country, especially with focus on personal data. So based on this, the government had drafted a data protection bill which had been brought into the parliament, but the bill became very controversial because of its provisions and the changes that the government had made, which was starkly different from the recommendations of the B.N. Sri Krishna Committee. This generated a lot of opposition in the parliament and even by media and civil society, because the government was giving a lot of exemptions to government agencies, especially security agencies, from the provisions of data protection law that would essentially enable mass surveillance and intelligence gathering, which would be a breach of right to privacy as well. So following the strong opposition, the government eventually withdrew the bill and drafted a new bill which was enacted last year, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. It's in this context that the question has been asked. So the topic is a repeat topic. In 2018, we had got a question on the same topic. Now, given that there are recent developments in current affairs, a question has been asked again. So describe the context and the salient features of Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Very simple question according to me. So you can start your answer by setting the context. Why was this act enacted essentially? You can point out that in today's world, data protection, data privacy is extremely crucial as we transition towards a digital economy, and also point out that right to privacy has been declared as a fundamental right under Article 21 by the Supreme Court in K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. So to provide for a data protection law, the government had constituted Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee, which gave a report, and based on the recommendations, the government had drafted a bill. But this bill became very controversial in the parliament and faced a lot of opposition and criticism, as the government was accused of giving exemptions to government agencies which would possibly enable the breach of your data privacy. On these grounds, the bill was withdrawn and a new bill was introduced which was enacted last year. So in the introduction in the first half of the body, you can clearly explain the context in which the new act was brought out. In the second part, you just have to mention the salient features. Again, it's a 10-mark question. Your answer has to be very concise. maybe around 5 or 6 salient features related to the Act is more than enough. For example, you can mention that it addresses the question of jurisdiction. See, when it comes to data and anything on the internet, applying the regular concept of jurisdiction is not possible, because in the cyberspace, which is a virtual space, there is no concept of geographical boundaries or geographical jurisdiction. Now, this has always been a challenge for Indian security agencies and law enforcement, especially when foreign tech companies are collecting Indian data and processing and storing that Indian data abroad in foreign servers. This was creating a jurisdictional issue for Indian authorities and for India's legal system. So this problem is solved by providing jurisdiction both within the country and even outside the country. As in, if Indian data is getting collected by be it a private entity or a government organization, if it is stored and processed and handled within India, or even if it is taken out of India for processing and storage, all such data gets covered by the provisions of the law. So it clearly extends the jurisdiction and ensures the safety, the integrity of Indian data, Indian user data, thus allowing the government to protect right to privacy of the citizens, which is a fundamental right. Next, you can mention how the law identifies data principals and data fiduciaries. Data principals are essentially the users, the citizens who are contributing data, either to private companies or government organizations. Data fiduciaries are the intermediaries who are collecting, handling, processing and storing your data. So this could be a private entity or a public organization. So this law provides a set of rights to the data principals, that is the users and the citizens, in order to protect their right to privacy. It places few duties and obligations on data fiduciaries in order to ensure that they are held accountable and responsible for protecting user data. For example, several rights are given to data principals, such as right to consent, meaning without your explicit consent, no entity can collect or handle or process your data, except for few public reasons or government purposes, for administrative reasons. It gives you the right to be forgotten. If you want to delete your social media account, you can insist on the right to be forgotten so that the concerned tech company will ensure that all the data held against you will be permanently deleted with no records at all. It also provides the right to obtain information, seek any corrections in the data that you have provided, and even to have the right for grievance redressal. If you have any complaints regarding how the data is being handled and processed by a data fiduciary, there should be an option for you to raise your complaint, to raise a grievance, and that should be redressed by the concerned data fiduciary. It provides the right to seek information regarding how your data is being handled and processed, and also to seek any corrections. Maybe you made a typo, you entered the wrong details. So these rights have to be secured, provided by the fiduciaries. So such obligations and duties are placed on them. You can also point out that even under the current law, the government has given a lot of exemptions to government agencies. See, in some cases it is necessary. For example, for institutions like UIDAI, which maintains Aadhaar data, it's essential to exempt the authority from certain obligations, or else the government will not be able to fulfill the basic need to provide public services. But the exemption given to security agencies and intelligence agencies is the main cause for concern. On the grounds of national security, law and order, and such grounds, the government has given exemptions for security and intelligence agencies, which potentially could be misused. But the government says there are enough checks and balances, but it does provide exemption for security and intelligence agencies, which again raises the same concern. And finally, it provides for establishment of a data protection board to enforce the law, to settle any disputes arising out of its enforcement. So 5 to 6 points like this should be more than sufficient to bring out the salient features of the law. Let's look at question number 19. This question is related to border security, border management. In fact, the exact same topic I had discussed in Conquer Mains. Let's look at the question. India has a long and troubled border with China and Pakistan, fraught with contentious issues. So the question begins with a statement regarding the border challenges that we face with China and Pakistan. Then comes the Second part of the question. Examine the conflicting issues and security challenges along the border. Also give out the development, that is border development being undertaken in these areas under the Border Area Development Program and Border Infrastructure and Management Scheme. Even though it's a lengthy question, trust me, it's a very easy topic. If you had attended the Concur main session, under the second session of internal security, I had covered the exact same topic. Border development with focus on the borders of China and Pakistan, the threats emanating from these borders. So you can start your answer by first pointing out that India's borders with China, Pakistan is complicated because of the prevailing disputes. The India-China border dispute in the Himalayan border and the dispute we have with Pakistan, the Kashmir dispute and as well as the Sir Creek and Siachen dispute. But other than these border disputes and the hostile threats posed by China, Pakistan, there are many other cross-border problems that emanate from this border. See, the focus of the question is not just about the boundary dispute, right? The question is making it very obvious that yes, we already have a problematic border with these neighboring countries, but what other challenges are we experiencing here? So you need to look beyond the boundary dispute. So first acknowledge in the introduction that yes, we have these disputes with these neighbors. It is indeed a problematic border for India, but other than the dispute, we have many other security problems emanating from these borders. For example, in the Concur main session, I had specifically discussed China's border development programs, where it is developing these so-called model villages, known as Yokang villages. In the disputed areas, China is strengthening its claims very close to the Indian border and sometimes across the disputed border in Indian territory claimed by India. It is building these so-called model villages and trying to populate them. It's trying to bring in population from the hinterland and trying to settle them here by creating the required infrastructure so that it strengthens China's claims and also serves a security purpose. As the people living in the border areas, they play a very important role in ensuring border security. They can become the eyes and ears of the armed forces and the intelligence agencies to look out for any suspicious activity. So China has been strengthening its position and even extending these so-called model villages in disputed areas, sometimes even in territory claimed by India. So this represents a major challenge for us. Then if you look at the Pakistan border, I had discussed this as well in the Concur main session. You can see the screenshot here. I had specifically pointed out to the India-Pakistan border and the cross-border problems that we face. Apart from the infiltration of terrorists, Pakistan enables drug smuggling and arms smuggling into India by using smugglers and traffickers through the secret underground tunnels that are dug across Punjab, Rajasthan and Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan enables organized crime, which in turn fuels terrorist activities. Of late, Pakistan has been using drones, cheap commercially available drones, to drop arms and weapons and other contraband into the Indian side, creating a major challenge across this border. So set the context in the body. Talk about the China-Pakistan border and these security problems, and then in the next part of the body, discuss the importance of border development. See, in this question, you can go into more details because it's a 15-mark question for 250 words. So you have more flexibility to write a detailed answer. So the introduction is done and the first half of the body is done. Now talk about the importance of border development from India's perspective. You can mention if we have to secure these borders with China, Pakistan, where we are facing these threats, we need to develop these areas, provide good infrastructure, ensure that the border villages remain populated. Because if you don't develop the border villages, due to lack of opportunities, people might migrate out of here to other parts of the country, leaving these villages depopulated. This weakens our claims and strengthens the claims of the hostile neighbors. Also, as I said, a border population is like the eyes and ears of the government and the security and intelligence agencies. They can look out for any suspicious activity, report them to the border guarding forces, the army or the intelligence agencies. So ensuring that the border population is loyal to the country, right, requires developmental efforts. You need to provide connectivity, build good roads, provide essential services, create job opportunities. That is the reason why border development is crucial, It serves a strategic purpose, an economic purpose as well, enables the livelihood of the people in these areas and helps in keeping these villages populated. This is the exact point I had discussed in Conquer Mains, which you can directly use in your answers. Now coming to the last point, the question is asking you to talk about India's measures and initiatives under Border Area Development Program and Border Infrastructure Management Scheme. Again, the same topic was discussed in Conquer Main session. I explained what is BADP, how India implemented this program in the 80s and 90s with focus on the Pakistan border to develop the border villages and provide good infrastructure and facilities. Later, the scheme was expanded to cover all the borders with China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh and Myanmar. And today it's one of the key initiatives implemented by the Home Ministry, by the Border Management Division to provide for border development. So the center is working with the border states and the districts to create better roads, provide mobile and internet infrastructure, to create livelihood opportunities and essentially strengthen India's presence and influence in the border regions. So this not only serves an economic and social purpose, it will also serve a strategic defense purpose. It will enable the quicker deployment of Indian troops when there is better infrastructure, right? It will help the local population remain in favor of our security forces and act as the eyes and ears of our security forces. Mention the Border Infrastructure Management Scheme as well, which is a central sector scheme through which the center provides dedicated funds for these infrastructure projects. You can even mention the Vibrant Villages program, which was recently launched by the Modi government with specific focus on border villages facing China. This is India's counter to China's Yokang program. If China is building model villages, India also has launched a similar program announced last year in last year's budget, where the villages in Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh are being prioritized and dedicated funding is being provided to provide better infrastructure and facilities in these villages facing China. So once you mention all these points with maybe some examples of border projects, it is more than sufficient. In the Conquer Main session, I had given few specific examples of India's border infrastructure projects. You can mention some of the strategic roads and tunnels and bridges which India has recently built, especially facing the Pakistan and China border. You can point out the reactivation of advanced landing grounds, which allows Indian Air Force to carry out forward deployment, which not only serves a defense purpose, but can be used to help the local people during disasters. So a few points on this with specific examples of these projects like Atal Tunnel, the Sela Tunnel project and the strategic road and railway projects that we are building, right? You can mention the Darchula-Lipu Lake road that connects India with the tri-junction of Nepal and China. You can mention the Daulat Beg Oldi road that connects with Leh Ladakh, which is a strategic road passing parallel to line of actual control. These are some new projects which were in the news, in current affairs. So few examples like this is more than sufficient to justify your argument. Now coming to the last question from internal security, question number 20. This is related to social media and encrypting messaging platforms and how they are misused to create security threats. Clearly the question is based on the recent action that we have seen against Telegram, especially by countries like France. And also in the recent past, there have been such controversies related to social media platforms and encrypted messaging services such as WhatsApp, Telegram and other similar platforms. So question says that these platforms pose a serious security challenge, while what measures have been adopted at various levels to address the security implications of social media also suggest any other remedies. So three parts to the question. So begin the answer by talking about the potential threats, security threats emerging from misuse of social media, especially encrypted messaging platforms. You can point out that platforms like Telegram have been the preferred mode of communication for terrorist organizations such as Islamic State. Terrorists belonging to ISIS and Lashkar-e-Toiba have easily used encrypted platforms like Telegram, which provides end-to-end encryption. It becomes almost impossible for security intelligence agencies to break into the platforms to carry out surveillance, even on known terrorists. So ISIS would be the best example here. You can point out how few Indian youth were misled and radicalized and convinced to travel to Iraq and Syria to join ISIS by using platforms like Telegram, WhatsApp, and other social media platforms. So clearly you can bring out the security threat and challenges posed by the misuse of social media, especially encrypted messaging platforms. Next, discuss the measures that we have taken up to counter the threat. You can mention the IT rules which has provided for regulation of social media intermediaries. This is a very important point. Maybe you can shed some light about the new IT rules notified in 2021 that provided for regulation of social media intermediaries such as Telegram, WhatsApp, etc. that covers these encrypted messaging platforms. You can mention that under the new IT rules, these major social media intermediaries, they should have a presence in India. They should have a registered office. They should have few officials, a compliance officer. There should be a grievance redressal officer appointed who can be the point of contact, not just for the subscribers of the platform, but even for the government, for the security law enforcement agencies to reach out when we need assistance and cooperation from these platforms to share information when we are investigating a certain case. Is that clear? They are obligated to take down any harmful content and block any harmful content. If there is any content threatening our security and law and order, the concerned authorities can issue these orders under IT rules, and these platforms have to take down the content. If they don't respond within the prescribed time period, their safe harbor provision will be removed. Under IT Act, they enjoy a safe harbor provision, meaning they are free from legal immunity, or rather they are free from legal accountability. So any content posted on these platforms by a third party user, these platforms are not liable and accountable according to IT Act. Section 79 provides for this safe harbor, a legal immunity for the companies. But now IT rule says that if the companies don't comply and show due diligence, the safe harbor provision can be removed, which means the company officials can be arrested and prosecuted in these cases. So this is a very important measure. Also provide a counterpoint. There is a concern that such a strict provision could be misused by the government to target criticism, dissent and opposition, which could curb freedom of speech and expression. Then mention that intelligence and security agencies are stepping up their surveillance capabilities so that they can break into these algorithms if necessary when there is a legitimate target who has to be brought under targeted surveillance. Our agencies are building up those capabilities as well. You can mention the likes of NTRO, IB, etc., which have such capabilities to break into some of the platforms if required and access the information when necessary when we are carrying out surveillance on a targeted individual. So mention these measures undertaken by the government. Also, you can talk about the self measures initiated by some of the companies as well. Of late, companies also are showing greater responsibility and accountability by bringing some changes in their features and technology, which can help in preventing the misuse of the platforms. They are deploying AI tools for content review. They have a physical manual review done by a team of content reviewers, right? They have shown some willingness to cooperate with authorities as well in some genuine cases. And also you can mention the need to spread awareness amongst people about how these platforms can be misused. So I think that should complete the answer, and you can also suggest anything from your side, any innovative suggestion which could help in tackling the security threat posed by the misuse of encrypted messaging platforms. Now coming to disaster management, we had two questions for 30 marks. Question number 17 dealt with a core concept in disaster management, that is disaster resilience. What is disaster resilience? How is it determined? Describe various elements of a resilience framework and also mention the global targets of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Now this again partly is a repeat question. Previously UPSC has already asked a question on Sendai framework and now it's repeating the question again. So this was fairly simple. If you have covered disaster management, the basics, I am pretty sure that you would be able to write a good answer. See, in the plus classes for disaster management, I had covered the exact same topic. We discussed about disaster risk and disaster risk reduction, which covers the concept of disaster resilience, which is the core focus of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. So you can build resilience against disasters by tackling the hazard and vulnerability by mitigating and reducing the exposure. The theme of Sendai framework is disaster risk reduction, how you can reduce disaster risk which arises at the convergence of vulnerability, hazard and exposure. So maybe you can draw this image as well, just representing hazard, vulnerability and exposure, and how disaster risk arises at the intersection of these three. So disaster resilience focuses on minimizing the disaster risk and improving our ability to cope and respond to a disaster. So explain this in your own words with a flowchart or a image that you can draw, and explain the elements of disaster resilience: context, disturbance, capacity to deal or cope with the disturbance, and the reaction or how you can respond to a disaster. These are the four primary elements. You don't have to explain that in detail, just the question is asking you about the four elements of disaster resilience. So mention the four elements and then move on to discuss the targets of Sendai framework. There are 7 targets which I had clearly explained and discussed under the plus classes for disaster management. So mention and bring out these 7 targets. It's very factual. Maybe you can add some analysis to make the answers more interesting. You can point out that there are few targets under Sendai framework which focuses on reducing mortality rate, the casualty or injuries, reducing the financial losses arising out of disasters, and give the exact target specified under the Sendai framework. Right? So it is right here in the notes that we had shared with the students. You can provide that assessment, and you can also discuss how it focuses on promoting international cooperation, and it focuses on multi-hazard early warning systems, because with better forecasting you can prevent or at least mitigate some disasters, thus reducing mortality rates and the overall impact of a disaster. So clearly specify these 7 targets, provide a small assessment about that, and maybe you can mention in the conclusion as to where India stands when it comes to implementing the targets of Sendai framework. You can mention that India is fully obliged with the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. We have integrated these targets into our National Disaster Management Policy and Plan that was adopted by the National Disaster Management Authority. So that shows India's commitment to strive towards achieving these targets. Now coming to the last question, question number 18. It's related to urban flooding. Flooding in urban areas is emerging as a climate-induced disaster. Discuss the causes of the disaster, mention the features of 2 such major floods in the last 2 decades, describe the policies and framework in India that helps in tackling these floods. Again, looks like a very lengthy question, but very simple, very straightforward. We had discussed flooding and urban flooding again in our plus classes of disaster management. We had explained the causes of urban flooding. What leads to urban flooding? Urban flooding is not just a natural disaster. It occurs not just because of extreme heavy rainfall. There are few man-made anthropogenic factors which contribute to it, and one of them is climate change. The question's focus is on that. It focuses on increasing urban flooding incidents, which is seen as a climate-induced disaster. So because of global warming, we are witnessing more frequent and intense extreme weather events, including extreme heavy rainfall and cloud bursts. And this leads to such flooding incidents in our cities. Now you need to mention the problems associated with urbanization. How rampant unplanned urbanization has led to such incidents, specifically in India. The question is asking about 2 examples in the Indian context in the last 2 decades. I think the best example would be the Chennai urban floods of 2015 that caused massive devastation. The urban floods in Mumbai in 2005, or maybe even the recent urban floods in Delhi and Bengaluru. So any such example would do, but you have to explain why these incidents are increasing. Why extreme rainfall triggered by climate change is leading to more urban flooding incidents. You should talk about the problems related to urbanization, how we have destroyed the natural buffers like lakes and wetlands, encroached upon the catchment areas and the water bodies in cities, built residential areas and complexes, right, over the catchment areas, the catchment basins. Obviously, when there is heavy rainfall, these areas in a city will get flooded. You can take specific examples like the Adyar River Basin in Chennai, how it has been encroached by urbanization, residential complexes, even government properties have come up on the riverbed itself. Obviously, when there is heavy rainfall, it will lead to massive floods. So take specific examples like this, or the recent flooding caused by Yamuna in Delhi. Right? These are very specific examples to show problems related to urbanization, and that basically explains urban flooding. Then talk about the measures. What can we do? Talk about the importance of early warning and forecasting. If there is early warning about heavy rains or cloud bursts, it will help in predicting such flood incidents. And you can take several structural, non-structural measures. Divide your answer into structural and non-structural measures. So you can talk about the creation of dams, embankments, which can hold the water, the excess flood water, to protect certain residential colonies and populated areas in cities. You can discuss non-structural measures, policy-based measures like zoning, how you can use hazard maps, vulnerability maps to identify the most prone areas, the low-lying areas, and prevent construction and economic activities and human settlements in those areas. So this is what I had covered in the disaster management classes. I spoke about the importance of zoning as far as urban planning is concerned. You need long-term planning. Identify the low-lying areas and flood-prone areas, restrict human activities and human settlements, and create dams and embankments wherever possible to hold the flood water. So both structural and non-structural measures are necessary to tackle urban flooding. So with these points, you can easily complete the answer and ensure that you get the best marks possible for this question. So on this note, I complete my discussion. So just wait for a few minutes. I'll hand over the session to Mukesh sir, who will discuss the questions from environment and ecology. And if you guys have liked the session, do press the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.
Hello, good afternoon to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the analysis of the questions which have appeared for the portion of agriculture as well as environment. Now, where we shall be taking a look at what the questions were and the relevance of them, why they were asked, whether they were on the expected lines or not, and what you could as a candidate would have written if those questions came in the examinations, what should be your approach and what should be the key pointers that needed to be addressed. Having said that, if you are liking this initiative of ours and if you are liking the content, please don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button and put that in the comment section below. Now, without further ado, let us take a look at the questions which have appeared both for the portion of agriculture and the portion of environment. Most of them were on the expected lines itself, owing to the issues which have been in news for the past year and a half. Now, starting with the first question that appeared. So this question was, explain the role of millets for ensuring health and nutritional security in India. So here, when we talk about this particular question, millets have been an area in news for some time now. Now, last year you had India making a significant progress and role in the terms of declaring 2023 as the International Year of Millet. So last year also you had a question associated with millets. Then, to follow that up, you had reports about the Global Hunger Index, which put India in a very abysmal and a poor rank. So that again puts that aspect of nutritional security and health security, because we have to understand that now India is no longer in a position where we talk about the lack or the absolute scarcity of food which we used to face in the colonial era and as well as in the newly independent country. Now we are in a situation where we have immense amount of buffer stocks which are maintained for various different crop items and for various different harvested food items. So despite that surplus of food, we still face that nutritional scarcity because of the fact that when we talk about malnutrition, in India, the absolute number of children who are malnourished or undernourished, that is very high. So malnutrition, undernourishment, these are the things which are a problem. But at the same time, India is also one of those countries which is facing significant amount of lifestyle diseases such as hypertension as well as obesity. So hypertension or the aspect of BP, then diabetes, right? Now, type 2 diabetes is also very prevalent in India. Obesity is very prevalent, a problem in India. So, owing to that, there are certain issues associated with the health security. That you have food, but are you healthy enough? So, the question is asking about the role of millets in ensuring that this undernourishment is also taken care of and a perfect living standard is also taken care of. Now, how do you answer this question? So, when you start to answer this question, you have to first of all mention about the aspect of India's position in the Global Hunger Index, where India has been ranked 111 out of 125 nations which have been ranked in that Global Hunger Index. But after that, you also have to mention that why these millets are beneficial. So the benefits associated, be it the nutritional benefits that we talk about. So when we talk about the nutritional benefits, you have to mention the aspect, let's suppose, about the high fiber content, the iron content, right? Fiber, iron content. Then the glycemic value, the low glycemic value which helps in tackling diabetes. Then the fact that it also promotes the gut health, and that promotion or improvement in the gut health, that is very important for maintaining or in order to fight against obesity, maintaining a weight balance. So these are some of the benefits which are associated, which obviously you will list. But other than that, you can also here list the relevance of millets in the changing scenario for India, where these millets, they are suitable for the climate resilient agriculture. In India, we are facing the wrath of climate change unlike any place else. So that climate resilient agriculture, owing to the fact that these millets can be grown under the conditions without irrigation facilities as well, and these millets can be grown in any of the soil conditions without much application of fertilizers. So dry land farming, there also millets can be cultivated, right? And these millets, because they can be utilized and grown in a larger scale, they are significantly, they can be consumed at a cheaper rate. So in a country where the per capita income is still not very high, so availability or at cheaper rate. So that is also a benefit. Other benefit, these millets can be utilized in a variety of food items, and that can end up improving your culinary variety and diversity as well. So all these factors are needed to be mentioned in the answer. So let us take a look at the structure which is required. Now, needless to say, we have covered the portion of millets quite significantly in our plus courses for the portion of geography, where we talk about the agricultural chapter. There we have talked about the major types of millets, the conditions required, the benefits, why it is referred to as the poor farmer's friend. So everything has been talked about in detail in the plus courses. But let us take a look at the structure. So first of all, how do you introduce the answer? So in the introduction, we can cite the fact, because what is the main argument of the question? What is the main demand of the question? Health and nutritional security in India. So obviously, the examiner is expecting you to know that the health and nutritional security is not in a good state and millets can improve that. So you substantiate that particular argument and fact by saying that India ranks 111 out of 125 as per the Global Hunger Index and has amongst the largest number of children in particular who suffer from undernourishment, malnutrition and other forms of wasting. Now, this has got a significant impact on the future potential of Indian population. Now, that is what will consist of your brief introduction. Now, there you have paved the way for the body where you have created a scenario or a backdrop where you have talked about the existing debacle and then what can be done or how the millets can help. So, here initiate by talking about in a bubble manner the type of major millets which are grown in India, and here talk about the growth of sorghum or jowar, bajra and ragi. These are the major millets, right, which are also known as sorghum, then finger millets and pearl millets. So, these are the major type of millets grown in India. Majority of them are cultivated under the conditions of dry land farming by small and marginal farmers where they don't have proper irrigational supply and proper fertilizational inputs which can be provided. So, that will be a brief background about the millet cultivation. Then what are the nutritional benefits? Millets such as jowar, such as ragi, they have a very high fiber content and that fiber content will also improve the gut health. Then they also possess a very rich amount of iron and calcium. Now, iron and calcium, that is very important because in a country like India, where we have a situation where more than 50% of the female population is anemic, that is, they suffer from a lack of iron content in their body. Now, that also means that the offsprings or the future generation is also going to suffer from lack of iron and lack of nutrition. So, this is a vicious cycle. So, when you have these foods or kind of superfoods which can provide that availability of iron, that will be very beneficial. Which millet provides that? Again, ragi is able to provide that iron content. And calcium. Calcium basically is significantly important not only for providing the various different or strength to the bones, but also fighting against the aspects of wasting, fighting against the various different diseases such as scurvy. So, there also the calcium input can be beneficial. It will also be beneficial for the maternal health and eventual child health development as well. So, the first portion of the nutritional benefit, you target the aspect of undernutrition, the aspect of why you have undernutrition and the impact associated. Then the benefits for health security, there the lifestyle diseases such as diabetes. So, the millets, they have got a very low glycemic index. So, they help control the issues such as diabetes. They improve the gut health, helps combat obesity, improves the condition of weight management and weight balance, and also makes individuals more healthier. Now, this is where you list it out. Then relevance in India, that it will always end up propagating and promoting the climate resilient agriculture, because these millets, they can grow under any conditions. That is something we have talked about, that you can mention. Can be used by small and marginal farmers, so they can be grown in a large scale. Where 86% of the farmers are either small or marginal, these millets can be grown in a very large scale, thereby improving the nutritional status, but at the same time ensuring a cheaper cost and a better availability at the same time. Now, eventually you conclude the answer by saying that utilization of millets in various different government schemes, the public distribution systems, as well as schemes such as the midday meal schemes for the young ones, that will benefit the population, make the population healthier, and eventually help in better utilization of the human capital that we have, ensuring a demographic future which is bright. That is what was expected out of the answer, and this was again a question on a very expected lines out there. Now, then moving on to the second question. The second question talks about the river pollution, but the river pollution owing to a particular source, that is the industrial waste or the industrial pollution. So, industrial pollution of river water is a significant environmental issue in India. Discuss the various mitigation measures to deal with this problem and also the government's initiatives in this regard. So, here what do you have to talk about? First of all, you have to address the main subject, industrial pollution. How do they pollute the river water? So, industrial pollution, whenever we talk about the river pollution or the aspect of any river getting polluted, river pollution is of two aspects or two categories. You have what is the point source and another is non-point source, right? Point source basically is where you have a singular addition or a single point addition of pollutants in the river, that is a point source. When we say a non-point source, that is where you have a distributed pollution source, for example, irrigational waste, for example, runoff of excessive fertilizers, for example, sewage from various different households in a settlement, untreated sewage. So, those are non-point sources. So, industrial pollution comes under the category of point source. So, this is one of the biggest problems of river pollution in India, where you have states such as Maharashtra, Assam, these are significantly impacted. Now, here you have to also list out various different industries which are involved. So, for example, leather tanneries, the handicrafts or the textile industries, then for example, even the steel industries. When we talk about oil refineries, they also end up being one of the pollution sources. So, see, these are some of the major industries. So, here that is what you have to structure, that is what you have to give the example also. Example is very important when you are writing the answer for this, and then eventually you have to discuss the mitigation measures. Now, mitigation measures and the government initiatives, they don't have to merge, they have to be different. What are the mitigation measures? Strict norms and monitoring, strict regulations. Then, for example, you talk about putting in filtration system and the recharge and the reutilization system of the waste, so that the wastes are then stored, proper disposal mechanisms to be developed at the level of the state government, at the level of the municipalities. So, these are some of the mitigation measures that you have to talk about. And in the government initiatives, Water Act, that is a legislative measure. Then the aspect of Namami Gange program you can highlight, the strengthening of CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, and the State Pollution Control Board under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, which gives them the power to ensure seizures and closures of any industry which is violating the norms for industrial discharge. Those will be the government initiatives that you list upon. So, let us take a look at the structure. So, in the introduction, industrial discharges, they come under the point sources of the pollution of rivers, right? Now, they impact the biodiversity and also the ecological flow of the river, because when you have excess amount of discharge and dumping of waste into the river, the natural ecological flow of the river will get impacted. Now, this is a question for environment, where this keyword of ecological flow will end up exemplifying that how biodiversity gets impacted. If the river is unable to flow naturally in its natural velocity or in its natural carrying capacity, as a consequence of that, the nutritional availability for the various different species living in the aquatic ecosystem, that will be also impacted. So, the industrial effluents, they do that. So, what are the sources of pollutions and the regions which are impacted by the river pollution? So, you can list the various regions as well, or industry wise region can be listed as well. So, here heated water is also, very hot water is a major pollutant. Many of the times we think that it is simply clean water, so it should be fine. But when you have a very hot water, that immediately creates a kind of a dead zone in the region. This is oftentimes generated out of the steel industries. Steel, iron and steel industries, they generate that heated water. Ideal norms, they state that the waste should ideally go to the cooling ponds, and then after some time, after treating that, then they should go to or be discharged to the rivers. But oftentimes this norm is not followed. So that is where these steel industries, they are known to discharge that heated water. Now what it creates leads to the creation or depletion of oxygen, depletion of dissolved oxygen, and that depletion of dissolved oxygen eventually will lead to creation of dead zones. Okay? That is again something that you can talk about. Dead zone means hypoxic water where species cannot survive. Then the industrial waste that is simply dumped in many of the cases. For example, here you have the oil industry, oil extraction and refinery. Here the example can be given of the region of Assam. In Assam, for past few years now, it has been observed that certain oil refineries and certain extraction points, they have been operating without environmental clearance and without the approval of environmental impact assessment plans for more than a couple of decades now, owing to the politician bureaucracy nexus and the involvement of profiteering. That is where it has been found that many of them, they are polluting the river systems, particularly river Brahmaputra, and that has impacted the biodiversity of fishes which can be found in that area. And if fishes are impacted, that will also end up impacting the waterfowl species, that is the bird species, particularly the migratory species of birds. So that as an example along with the region and the impact will always be valuable when you write the answer. Then discharges from the leather and the textile industry as well. Here give the case of river Ganga, particularly in the region around Kanpur. Now Kanpur, which has got a lot of leather tanneries, now that adds substantial amount of chromium as a waste into the river system, and that again can lead to significant amount of impact on the biodiversity. Many of the times that dumping of the waste by the industries without proper treatment will end up blocking the river flow and exaggerating the pollution and even impacting the pollution of the groundwater. So once you have listed that what kind of environmental pollution or industrial pollution is happening in the rivers, then talk about the impact of it. What will be the impact? Reduced flow, right? That will impact the biodiversity directly. It can lead to water scarcity as well. When you have increased population pressure living on the sides of the river valleys and the river basins, that will always end up impacting the population in that region in terms of how much water can be drawn and what water is available. Then the species which are impacted, here you can give the example of Gangetic or the Gangetic dolphin, for example, the riverine dolphin that you find in river Ganga. So that is also one of the species which is impacted. Then other than that, you have species such as Hilsa is one of the fish which is impacted due to increased amount of pollution by the jute processing mills in the region of the Hooghly River basin. So that can also be given as an example. So these kind of examples can be cited. How it can lead to bioaccumulation and biomagnification, because this contaminated river water is oftentimes drawn up and used for irrigation purposes, and that contaminated water goes into the crop systems, and that ends up leading and accumulating in our body, leading to a detrimental impact in our body system as well. So these are the points that you could add, and eventually the mitigation measures and the government initiatives. So what are the mitigation measures? Strict regulation and norms need to be adopted. Filtration and recharge system, recycling, reuse, so that as much waste as possible can be removed. Regular checks and the monitoring even after the industry is operating. Proper EIA clearance is required for any project carried out anywhere. So these are some of the mitigation measures. After you have talked about the mitigation measures, what are the government initiatives? The government, in amongst the first act that it passed to combat pollution was the Water Act of 1974. It was under this Water Act of 1974 that the Government of India ended up creating the Central Pollution Control Board, which is the apex body in order to fix the regulations and in order to combat the pollution problem that the country faces as well. So, regulation by CPCB and SPCB, that is the State Pollution Control Board, that has further been strengthened under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. So, where the power has been given to the officials to ensure regular checks, surprise inspection, and whichever party is found to be violating the norms, they can ensure or order the closure of that industry as well. Then the Namami Gange program. Namami Gange program is an overarching scheme covering river Ganga and all its tributaries across the river basin, ensuring that the level of pollution is particularly low, ensuring the ecological flow, maintenance of sewage treatment plants, building of sewage treatment plants across the Ganga river basin so that untreated water is not discharged in order to improve the health of the river system. Then you can also talk about the EIA norms 2020, norms 2020, right? That basically again signifies the relevance of any industry ensuring that the river pollution or the river passing through that area is not impacted. So, these are the various points that need to be added to make that answer wholesome. Examples need to be cited whenever you have questions associated with environment or any question for that matter in the GS. Examples will make your answer relatable and will make your answer look not very bookish or something that you have simply rectified. Then in the conclusion, what do you write? Healthy rivers are a key or essential for healthy civilization, because after all, rivers are also referred to as the cradle of civilization. Various different civilizations have been birthed, or the genesis of the large civilizations happens to lie on the sides of the river valleys and the river basins. So, healthy rivers are essential for the healthy civilizations. Urgent action is needed in order to ensure clean environment, healthy ecology, and eventually healthy outcomes. Okay? Now, then the third question. What role do environmental NGOs and activists play in influencing the EIA outcomes for major projects in India? Cite 4 examples with all important details. Now, on the face of it, prima facie, this might appear to be very factual. But overall, if you declutter this language given in the question is very simple. About environmental impact assessment and the role of the NGOs, that's it, right, or the activists, any of them. So, basically, why this question has been asked first of all? This question has been asked keeping in mind the relevance of the Great Nicobar project. Great Nicobar project has been in news for the past year, owing to the impact and the issue and the damage that it can create in the region of Great Nicobar. We had discussed this in quite significant detail in our Conquer Mains QEP program. So, it was very much on the expected lines. So, that in itself is one of the examples of the issue associated or the NGOs taking an issue with the EIA norms passed. So, first of all, how do you frame this answer? In this answer, you have to bring forward different themes. First of all, the theme regarding what do you understand by EIA, right? Then after that, that thing should go into the portion of introduction itself. That is the main theme or the main subject of the question, not the NGOs. Then after that, the role played by the NGOs. And because it is a 150 worded answer that is required, only cite the examples. And eventually, in the conclusion, talk about the importance of these NGOs. Now, you see, here you can give both or take both the examples. Sometimes some of the NGOs, they also play a detrimental role by influencing the public opinion so that you have the closure of certain or you have the certain projects which are passed without proper clearance as well. So, they can influence the public opinion as well, but most of the times, majority of the times, environmental NGOs are used as or they serve as the checks and balances to ensure that the environment is taken care of and people's health are taken care of. Examples, amongst the examples, you can start with the Chipko movement, started in 1973 itself under the leadership of Sundarlal Bahuguna in the region of Uttarakhand to prevent deforestation. That is one of the examples of the activists taking over. Then you have the Narmada Bachao Andolan initiated by Medha Patkar, which talked about, which talked about the conservation and the migration of the people from the region of the Sardar Sarovar Dam project and the environmental issue and impact caused by that. Then you can talk about Greenpeace and their point against, or their protest against, the Kudankulam nuclear power plant constructed in the region of Tamil Nadu. You can take the example of activists in ensuring the closure of the Sterlite plant in Tamil Nadu, which was known to cause significant amount of health impact in the local population. Then you can talk about the Great Nicobar project. Then you can give the example of interlinking of Ken-Betwa project, how that would end up submerging large areas of the Panna Reserve, Biosphere Reserve, and how it will impact the very vital tiger population. So all these various examples you have to, or you can give. You had to give only 4 examples. Recently, there was in news last month about the activists opposing the Shravati water pump storage system. In order to provide more drinking water facilities in the region of Bangalore, Shravati river system was to be exploited, and for that the impact on the Western Ghats and even in the coastal ecosystem would be significant, and that is where the activists are up in arms. So you have various different programs or various different role played by the activists. In the conclusion, you have to paint a positive picture that they serve as vital checks and balances, and they have to be a part of the solution seeking process where a healthy environment and a balanced development come environmental conservation, that balanced progress is taken care of. So how do you structure that? In the introduction, what is meant by environmental impact assessment? So it is a detailed assessment study carried out in order to understand a project's implication and its impact on the biodiversity and the environment in the long as well as in the short as well as in the long run. So that is your introduction about what is environmental impact assessment. At max, you can write one more sentence that it is very vital to ensure the sustainability of the region and also ensuring that the population at large is not impacted. Now, the role played by the NGOs and the activists, both of them, they play a significant role in this. What do? So they help in monitoring and ensuring the compliance of the existing project. They raise the awareness amongst the common population. For example, in the very famous case of the Sterlite plant closure in the region of Tamil Nadu, you basically had a lot of people suffering from health issues and health diseases because of the discharge by that plant, but not everybody could link it to that particular plant. So that is where the activists, they played a significant role carrying out the detailed investigation that, okay, what type of contaminants are to be found in the body and what is their linkage between them. So raising awareness, carrying out detailed studies for variety of projects, and detailed study here also ensures carrying out the study of which particular species will be impacted, which local area will be impacted, for what long run can be impacted, all that detailed study. Bringing out the public grievances at a public forum by holding the local level public hearings about individuals who don't have that power to file litigations or who don't feel that they can end up fighting against big corporates. That is where these activists, they hold that baton and they take that fight forward. Monitoring and compliances. So these are some of the benefits associated. Then examples cite the Great Nicobar project, because this Great Nicobar project will always end up impacting the local population of the tribals in that area, but also hamper the various different critical habitats, particularly in the Galathea National Park and also the region of the Nicobar Island, which is a part of the biodiversity hotspot and that is the Sundaland biodiversity hotspot. Species like leatherback turtle, horseshoe crabs, dugongs, they basically will get impacted. So this is where the activists, they filed a litigation, a PIL in the Madras High Court, which ordered a review of the EIA clearance, and that is where this project has now been or is being reviewed again. So that detail you could mention. Interlinking of Ken Betwa involving the submergence of the Panna Biosphere Reserve and the loss of habitat and the fragmentation of habitat of the keystone species of tigers which are found in that area. And also this Ken Betwa interlink, now it is being found out that it can end up ensuring that both these river systems are dry rather than maintaining water sufficiency in both these, because both of them don't have enough water supply. Narmada Bachao Andolan initiated by Medha Patkar against the Sardar Sarovar Dam project, and the aspect was that not only will it impact the environment by submerging large areas of land, it will impact the vital bird population, migratory bird species which come to that area, but also it will impact the flow of the river Narmada which moves through the region, and that will impact the aquatic species in that area. Chipko movement initiated, so here you can name the individuals, Medha Patkar, right? Then you can talk about Sundarlal Bahuguna, who was also a very important key component of raising the awareness and galvanizing public support. Then the conclusion that these environmental NGOs, or other examples also are there, as I told you, Shravati system, then the example of Greenpeace, various examples that you can cite. Then the conclusion that you have to write is that importance of, or these NGOs and activists, they serve as a very important and a key check and balance in ensuring environmental protection and development go hand in hand, and ensuring no shortcut measures are adopted to further any corporate greed. This is very vital and important in order to ensure a sustainable future and ensure a sustainable life. Like that, you can conclude the answer. Then after that, discussing the last question, again associated with the portion of agriculture. Now, what are the major challenges faced by the Indian irrigation system in recent times? Okay, state the measures taken by the government for efficient irrigation management. So, the government measures, and what is the problem where we have the problem with the irrigation systems. So, amongst the major problems by the irrigation system, before you talk about the major problems, how do you introduce the answer? So, in the introduction here, the status of irrigation, where around half of the land areas or cultivable areas of the country, they don't have the access of irrigation. So, lack of irrigation, right? Lack of irrigation. That is something that you can cite here. Now, because of that, now once you have cited that majority of the areas of the country and majority of the farmers, they don't have access to irrigation, which leads to a reduced food production and reduced yield. So that is something which you talk about in the initial part. That paves the way for the body. In the body, you continue with that how it can lead to multiple crop failures, because now the farmers are dependent upon the variable rainfall which is received in majority of the parts of the country, concentrated within 3 to 4 months of the monsoon season. That is something that you can utilize when you introduce the answer as well, that India has got a rainfall distribution which is concentrated in 3 to 4 months of the year, where India receives 75% of the rainfall in those monsoonal season. The rest of the year is comparatively dry, which increases the importance of having irrigated farmlands. Having said that, half of the country or half of the cultivable lands don't have that access. That is also how you can introduce. Then the problems faced by the irrigation system. You have irregular rains, variable rainfall owing to the climate change. So you don't have enough water supply in the dams, in the rivers, in the streams. They are drying up. Then the irrigation systems, they are very costly, particularly, for example, when we talk about the eastern coastal canal irrigation system. Now that project has been reinitiated, then stopped, then again reinitiated, then again stopped, owing to the high cost involved. Now there is a round and round going by the state governments and the central governments because of the paucity of funds. So it has been going on for multiple years. You can take the example of even the Saryu project in Uttar Pradesh, which took more than 3 decades to be completed just for the irrigation system. So that tells you that costly projects and cost overruns, they are a significant impediment. Then delayed execution of the project, then lowering of groundwater levels also mean that supply or availability of water through tube well systems, that is also becoming very difficult, particularly in the region across the northern part of the country and nowadays even in the region of peninsular India. Small and marginal farmers, they form a bulk of the farming community in India. Now, they have a very low level of income. So, their ability to invest in those irrigational sources, that is also very reduced. As a result, they don't have the access. Then lack of coordination between the states when it comes to discharge of water. For example, we are taking a look right now. It is unfolding in front of our eyes, the conflict between West Bengal government and Jharkhand government with regards to the release of water from the Maithan Dam. Now, that lack of coordination means availability of water through the emergency canals, etc., is not present. Then, what are the measures which have been taken? Micro irrigation schemes are being promoted in drier areas. For example, you have the schemes such as for the promotion of sprinkler and drip irrigation, more crop per drop, so water conservation. Then accelerated irrigation benefit program for faster construction of the already allocated canal systems which have received clearance. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana for improving the coverage of irrigation across the country. Saur Sujal Yojana, ensuring the availability of solar energy for pumping out water so that it is cheaper and it is available even to the small and marginal farmers, and they have the avenue to earn income as well. Interlinking of river scheme is another project which is being carried out in order to ensure water sufficiency across the various areas despite the variability of rainfall from one topography to another. Now, when you write all this, in the conclusion you talk about the fact that India having a demography of more than 45% of the population involved in agriculture directly or indirectly needs to ensure a higher productivity level and a higher income level for this set of population. Irrigational systems and improved irrigational access is one of the key points and one of the major areas which will ensure food security for the future generation and also ensure better livelihood and better income. So like that, you can cover this entire theme and the entire question holistically. Overall, you can say that if you have been well versed with our various different plus courses and the Conquer Mains and the UCAN sessions, this would have been a pretty easy portion to cover, and these 4 set of questions would have been easy to cover. Having said that, even if you are well versed with the portion of current affairs for the past year, these questions were very much in discussion, these themes were very much in discussion and have come on the expected lines. If you have liked this particular detailed analysis, please click on the like, share and the subscribe button. Now, I'll pass it on to Hima ma'am, who will discuss the questions which have appeared from the portion of Science and Tech. See you again. Take care. Thank you.
Good evening friends, good evening all of you. Once again a happy paper. This year many questions came from the science and technology, both from the current affairs classes and the comprehensive classes. So we categorized 4 questions as science and technology. Let us continue with the discussion. The first question we are discussing is the question number 5. What is the present world scenario of intellectual property rights with respect to the life materials? First, what is intellectual property rights? These are the rights given to the creators or the innovators so that they will get recognition and commercial benefit, financial or commercial benefit for the products they produced. And which organization internationally, which organization protects the intellectual property rights? The World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, a UN agency, ensures that the global innovators' ideas, intellectual property is protected successfully to reach the market, give them recognition and also the financial benefit. So, WIPO protects the intellectual property rights globally. And globally, there has been a surge in patent filing related to the life material. Then what is life material? So, this is just a word used for the biological material. For what kind of biological material the innovators may require the intellectual property rights? Pharmaceutical products like vaccinations, antibiotics, etc. Genetically modified organisms like transgenic animals, GM crops, etc. And also certain other genetic material like the genetic markers, probes in the diagnostic test kits. These are all the different biological material or biotechnological material or the life material for which the creator or the innovator may expect the intellectual property rights. Under WTO, an agreement, that is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. This agreement will protect the intellectual property rights, and this agreement also includes the life material like the pharmaceutical products, biotechnology products, etc. So, what is life material? What are the intellectual property rights, and globally what organizations and agreements control them, we have discussed. Now, let us see the scenario of globally increasing the surge or increase in the filing of intellectual property rights. WIPO's World Intellectual Property Indicators 2023 reports observed that the patent applications in India grew by 31.6% in the year 2022, and currently India stood second in the world to file the patents, second country in the world to file the patents, and there is 31.6% increase in the number of patents filed. But the question itself is suggesting one problem here. India currently stood second in the world to file the patents. Still, only a few of them have been commercialized. It means we are filing for the patents and we are getting the patents, but we are unable to get the commercial benefits out of it. What are the reasons for it? So, let us move on to that segment. Okay. And the reasons behind less commercializations. Why are we failing to commercialize the products on which we have the patent rights? First one, weak industry academia link. Academics, that is the colleges, universities and research centers where the innovations happen, and the market which will generate the revenue. There is weak link between these two. The students in the colleges and universities do not know exact knowledge about the market demands, what exactly is needed in the market. So, in general, we are completing the academics. So, this weak link between the industry and academics is one reason why we are failing to commercialize the products on which we have the intellectual property rights. Next one is limited investment and funding. Limited investment, funding and the government cooperation is another reason for the lesser commercialization of these products. Okay. Complex regulatory environment. Wherever the regulation of the intellectual properties is very difficult, okay, or wherever The commercialization of the process is more complex procedure. We have to meet several requirements or lengthy procedure to commercialize them. Then the companies will be discouraged to commercialize the products. Clearance process for the drugs, medical devices and genetically modified organisms are lengthy, long testing periods, long clearance procedure, okay, are discouraging the commercialization. The market is not, the industry aspect is not motivated to commercialize these products because of the lengthy clearance and permission process. Next, absence of technology transfer infrastructure. What is this technology transfer infrastructure? Usually any university or a research laboratory will invent a new technology, and then this technology will be transferred to some startups or some companies for the manufacture. So we don't have strong technology transfer infrastructure standard operating procedures in the universities and research institutions. So they are failing to transfer their technology to the market so that the newly innovated products will be manufactured, and so that we will get some benefit out of it. Okay. Then on the whole, the conclusion here is, so we are very good in innovations, particularly in biotechnology field, in the vaccine manufacture, in the antibiotics manufacture. India is one of the leading countries and we are second highest in filing the patents, but we are lagging behind in commercialization of these products. So that is the question related to IPRs. Now, did we discuss this question in the class? Not exactly the same question. I mean, IPR related to the life material I did not discuss in the course, but what I have discussed in one of the recent classes is influence of emerging technologies on Indian IPR. So the reason why I included this particular question in the mains crash course that completed just a few days before the mains, in that course, the reason why I included this is, somehow I felt that a question from IPR is expected, but I also wanted to include the new technologies in this, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, how these technologies influence the IPR sector. So I just wanted to combine the new technologies and also the IPR, so that I wanted to give a combined question in the mains crash course. So this is one topic that I discussed in the mains crash course that completed just a few days before this exam. Now moving on to the next question. The next question that we categorized as a science and technology question is, what technology being employed for electronic toll collection on highways, and what are its advantages and limitations, and what are the proposed changes that will make this process seamless? Would this transition carry any potential hazards? As it is, this question we have discussed in the comprehensive course on science and technology. Okay. The topic we have discussed here is, if you observe this, originally we were using the optical scanners so that they will scan the vehicle and then they will permit from the toll gate. That shifted into this RFID, which is currently being used. Currently we are using the RFID. And what is the future plan now? The future plan is to shift to the GPS. Okay. So this particular thing from the class, okay, will clearly indicate what we have exactly. The same thing came in the question. What technology we are currently using? FASTag technology. And what technology we want to move in future? We want to change this FASTag based technology into the GPS based technology. Okay. Then right. So introduction. India currently employs FASTag, that is radio frequency identification tag. What is this radio frequency identification tag? How does this work? Okay. See, the toll plaza will have a reader. It will have a reader, and the reader will have something like an active radio waves emitting device, Okay, the reader in the toll plaza will emit the radio waves, and these radio waves will hit the tag. Tag will be on the vehicle, and this tag is connected to a bank account. From this account, the amount will be deducted. Okay. At the toll plaza, they will have the reader. Reader will have a radio wave emitter. It will emit the radio waves. These radio waves will hit the tag which is there on the windshield of the car or the vehicle. Okay. And this tag will reflect the radio waves, and the processor to which this reader is connected will process the data and will deduct the exact amount from the linked bank account. This is the RFID procedure, radio frequency identification procedure using FASTag. So, India currently employs FASTag, a radio frequency identification tag for electronic toll collection. FASTag, that is this tag, is fixed on the vehicle's windshield and it is linked to a prepaid account, allowing the toll payment to be deducted automatically as the vehicle passes through the toll gate. We don't have to stop at the toll gate. This technology reduces the need for stopping at the toll booths. As I have shown here, if we depend on the optical scanners, every vehicle should stop at the toll gate. That will increase the wait period. But from the optical scanners moving to the RFID or FASTag reduced that waiting at the toll gates. Next, what are the advantages of FASTag? First one is time saving, as I told you. Okay, in the optical scanners, the vehicle should stop at the toll gate. They will literally scan it and then we have to pass. So, it will waste a lot of waiting time at the toll gate. Okay, but now we don't have to wait as we pass from from 1 or 2 meters distance itself. The FASTag can be scanned by the RFID readers, the RFID or the FASTag readers in the toll gate. Okay, so it is time saving. Plus, it will cut down the need for the cash handlings. We don't have to carry the cash so that we have to pay at the toll gates. Next, this is environment friendly. How is it environment friendly? Because we need not wait at the toll gate, it will reduce the traffic congestion. As more traffic congestion increases the fuel consumption. So, because we are not waiting at the toll gates, the FASTag will also reduce the fuel consumption. Therefore, it is environment friendly. And transparency. If you use this optical scanners and if the amount is collected in the form of cash, transparency is not completely possible. But using FASTag, we are connecting this to a prepaid account, so every rupee collected is accountable. So, complete transparency is possible. So, currently which technology we are using? FASTag, and these are the advantages of FASTag. But what are the limitations of the FASTag? Okay, first one, scanner issue. Many times when we travel on the highways, we observed that actually they claim that the FASTag can scan the vehicle's tag from over approximately 1 meter distance, but most of the times what happens is we have to stop there and they will manually scan the tag. Okay, so scanner issues are there. Automatic scanners most of the times fail, requiring the manual scanning with the handheld devices. Most of the times this automatic scanners fail, and with handheld devices they will again manually scan it. This is one problem. Second one, misplaced multiple tags. Is it clear? So, either we misplace the tag or we have multiple tags. Okay, 2-3 tags attached on the windshield of the car, and the scanner will get confused between the 2-3 tags, which tag to read. That is another problem. Lack of uniformity. In some states, on certain highways, we have efficient scanners. In the other places, the scanners are not working properly. So, it means there is no uniformity and there is no level playing field in all the states and in all the highways. These are the problems associated with FASTag. Okay. We started implementing FASTag because we have certain advantages in that, and we are planning to discontinue that because we have these limitations in that. Fine. If we discontinue the usage of the FASTag, then what are the other new technologies that are proposed? Okay, the proposed new technology is as I have shown here, the GPS based thing. Okay, the proposed changes are the government plans to introduce GPS based toll collection using global navigation satellite system. So, if this comes, there is no need of the toll gates at all. A lot of infrastructure can be saved. A lot of manpower. But one thing, some people may lose the jobs. The people who sit in the toll gates, they will lose the jobs, but it is a part of the ongoing industrialization and the artificial intelligence that is anyway bound to happen. Okay, but as the topic here is confined to the toll collection, it will make the toll collection process easier. Okay, so GPS based toll collection using global navigation satellite system is the proposed next technology. So this system will calculate the toll based on the distance travelled by the vehicles. How can it calculate the distance travelled by the vehicles? Your total journey will be tracked by the GPS. Your total, not only at the toll gate. Your car or your vehicle will be tracked, okay, as long as it is travelling. Okay, this will eliminate the need for the toll plazas altogether. No need of toll plazas. Good. Okay, the vehicles will be equipped with an on-board unit to track their coordinates. Okay, so it means the GPS, the satellites, the global navigation satellite system, okay, will detect the on-board unit. Your vehicle will have on-board unit, and the global navigation satellite system will establish communication with the onboard unit on your vehicle, and that satellite will be tracking you not only at the toll gates but throughout your journey, and the exact amount will be deducted based on the distance you travelled. So this is GPS based system supported by global navigation satellite systems. What are the advantages here? First advantage is eliminating the toll booths. You don't have to stop at all. You will be tracked always. Okay. Second one, distance based charges. You will be charged for the exact distance you travelled, not even 1 rupee extra. So it will be cost saving for the users. Okay. Next, enhanced transparency. The GPS system can provide real-time data on the traffic patterns, okay, helping to improve the road management. With this, even the more environment friendly, okay, because it will give more real-time data and the traffic pattern, traffic congestion aside, ahead, all these things we will get information so that the traffic can be better managed, more environment friendly. So these are the advantages. But what are the potential hazards from this? What are the problems because of the GPS technology? First one, technological readiness. It means still FASTag, many toll gates are not completely equipped. Now this is a new technology. Are we really technically equipped for using GPS for this purpose? Do we have enough technological capability to deal with? Implementing a nationwide system requires upgrading the infrastructure and ensuring the accuracy of the GNSS devices. Okay, old vehicle adaptation. For example, if you have an old vehicle, okay, that is not compatible with the GPS. Is it clear? So retrofitting the old vehicles with this onboard unit may be challenging. Fixing this onboard unit on the old vehicles is difficult. Next, data privacy and security. It means, okay, the data, we know the concepts of big data, the data privacy, and this year, Digital Data Protection Act also appeared as one of the questions, the 10th question. Okay, so in that we discuss many issues, okay, like how to protect the data breaches and all these issues. Okay, so here when we are being tracked throughout our journey, it means data about where you are going, to which place you are going. Okay, so no secrecy, privacy left in your life, where you are going, which place, how much time you spent there, when did you return back. All this data is being generated and it is being stored, almost permanently it is being stored. So privacy and security issues. And initial chaos. Whenever we take up a new technology, we cannot be completely sure about it and we are not completely ready with that. So initial hiccups will be there. On the whole, the government feels that the GPS based technology is better when compared to the FASTag. Right. Thus, GPS based toll system promises a more efficient, a more seamless process. Its success depends on careful implementation, infrastructure upgrades. If we can overcome these limitations, this will become successful. So, on the whole, the summary here is optical scanners evolved to radio frequency identification system based FASTags, evolving to, in future, evolving to GPS. If we can overcome a few limitations, this is going to be successful. Okay. Moving on to the next question. The world is facing an acute shortage of clean and safe fresh water. What are the alternative technologies which can solve this crisis? Fresh water means not saline water. Safe water means water which is safe to drink. Okay. So, these are the 2 points you have to highlight here. Clean, safe, fresh water. Clean and safe, potable, drinkable, and fresh water. Fresh water here means not saline water. Then what are the alternative technologies which can solve this crisis? Briefly discuss any 3 such technologies. Actually, we have many technologies, but they are limiting to only 3 technologies. So, what are 3 such technologies, citing their key merits and demerits? First, according to the United Nations, as of 2022, 2.2 billion people lacked access to the safe drinking water. And by the year 2030, the global shortfall in freshwater resources can reach to approximately 40%. It means 40% of the people may not get access to the safe, clean fresh water. Addressing this crisis requires innovative technologies. Many innovative technologies. What are 3 of them? The first one I am picking here is UV water purification. Simple. UV radiations will pass through the water and it can kill the microbes. If there are any protozoal parasites like some plasmodium or some protozoal parasites are there in that, or some bacteria, okay, or some viruses. So, living organisms UV radiations can kill. Okay. UV water purification uses UV light to destroy harmful microorganisms, making the water safe to drink. This method is commonly used in the households and water treatment plants. We can use it either domestically or we can also use it large scale in the water treatment plants. Okay. What are the advantages of it? It can effectively kill the bacteria, viruses and other pathogens like some harmful fungi and some harmful protozoans, etc. Okay. And moreover, we are not using the chemicals in that. So, without chemicals, we can kill most of the harmful bacteria. That is one advantage. Low energy consumption. So, you don't have to constantly switch on, like for example, reverse osmosis and all. So, we have to constantly keep it running. Okay, it will consume more electricity. This will consume less energy and making it suitable for remote and off-grid areas. Okay, I mean even in the places where electricity is not available, in the remote places also we can use this UV purification both domestically or also at the treatment at the water plants level also. Okay, but what are the demerits? For example, in the water, if you have some arsenic or mercury or any other harmful elements, minerals, okay, this cannot be purified. So, it will purify only biological contamination, chemical contamination, pesticides, okay, or some herbicides or some toxic material or the antibiotics coming from the pharmaceutical companies' effluents. Okay, these cannot be treated. Okay, so it must be paired with other systems to remove the chemical pollutants. If you are using UV, you cannot use only UV. You will use UV to kill the biological impurities and you have to use some other procedures to purify the chemical pollutants. But it also it requires clear water because UV radiations, if you observe, they are long wavelength. UV radiations are long wavelength, okay, that is short, okay, like short frequency waves. It means they have less penetration capacity. They have less penetration capacity. Like for example, why do we use X-rays for taking images of the fractures and all? Why not UV rays? Because UV radiations cannot penetrate till our bones. So from this what we can understand, UV radiations do not have much penetration capacity. The reason for it is they are long wavelength, okay, and less frequency radiations. They do not have much penetration capacity. So the water must be clear. Okay, if the water is turbid, if there is turbidity in the water, if there is some contamination, UV radiations cannot pass through that. For example, if this is water container or water tank, so you have the water, UV radiations will stop here. They cannot penetrate deeper if the water is turbid. Okay, then second procedure is reverse osmosis. Okay, to understand reverse osmosis, let us first understand what is osmosis. Osmosis is movement of solvent. Solvent here is water from its high concentration. From its high concentration, I mean from the place where there is more water, okay, to its low concentration, okay, not on the whole low concentration, from a place where water is more, okay, to a place where water is less. From its high concentration means what? Okay, here water is more, solute is less. What is the solute here? Pollutants, contaminants. Is it clear? Means actually this is a dilute. Okay, this is actually a dilute mixture. It's a dilute mixture to a place where it is low. Okay, so water is low. It is low means here water is low. Water is low means solvent is low. Okay, solvent is low means solute is high. Solute is high. Okay, and here solute is contaminants. Okay, so I repeat, in the place, in what is osmosis? Movement of the solvent, that is water, from the place where water is high to a place where water is low. Okay, so like for example, here there is a membrane here, and here you have more water and less, okay, pollutants, less pollutants, and here you have water is less and you have more pollutants. Okay, if it is osmosis, where will it go? If it is osmosis, it will move from here to here. If it is osmosis, okay, in osmosis water goes from the place where water is high to a place where water is low. That is osmosis. But what we are discussing here? We are discussing reverse osmosis. Okay, this osmosis is spontaneous. You don't need energy for it. But what we are planning to do here? We are planning to do reverse osmosis. It means we have to force water from the place where water is less to a place where water is more. We have to force water to move from the place where water is less to a place where water is more. It means what? Where you have less pollutants. With this what happens? The pollutants will get further diluted. The pollutant, if more and more water comes into this, if more and more water comes into this, the pollutants will get further diluted. As osmosis is a spontaneous process, the reverse osmosis is a energy requiring process. Using energy, we have to force water from the place where it is less to a place where it is more. Why? To dilute these pollutants. Is it clear? This process is called as reverse osmosis. Is it clear? Okay. So, reverse osmosis is a filtration process that removes contaminants from the water by forcing it through a semi-permeable membrane. It is most commonly known for its use in drinking water purification. Also, it can, desalination is also possible. I mean, effective RO can convert saline water into fresh water as well. So, we can use this technology in large scale in the desalination plants as well, removing the salt and other effluent material from the water. How can it remove? Because it is diluting. Here you have more water, less pollutants, and more water is coming into this chamber. So, water increases. It means the concentration of the pollutants goes on decreasing. So, by this mechanism, we reduce the pollutants in the water. This is highly effective in removing wide range of contaminants. Like UV, it is not confined to only microbial pollutants. It can also purify the salt, desalination, and chemical pollutants like any antibiotics or any arsenic or mercury like pollutants, any pesticides, herbicides. All these things can be diluted. So we will get a water with almost negligible amount of this contaminants. This includes heavy metals, salts and chemicals, including the microorganisms as well. Provides high quality drinking water suitable for both residential and also industrial use. But what are the demerits? You might have noticed in your domestic reverse osmosis purifier, it will waste a lot of water. With significant wastage, up to 50% of the input water may be discarded as brine. But we can try to again pot that discarded water and use for some other purposes like flushing a toilet, etc. That is a different story, but on the whole, everybody will not be equally responsible to take care of that. So, therefore, almost 50% of the water is getting wasted, and it constantly require electricity. Constantly we should keep it switched on, and on the top of it, every year we have to change the membranes, lot of maintenance. These are the disadvantages with this. Next one, acoustic nanotube filtration. This technique is very simple. Nanometer. Nanometer means 10 to the power of -9 of a meter. So, very small pore size filters will be used to filter out the contaminants. So, this is also capable of filtering biological and chemical pollutants. What are the merits here? Highly effective and energy efficient, because it is a process of filtration, physical filtration. It will not consume that much electricity as the reverse osmosis purifiers consume. But what are the demerits of it? Very expensive, because we are using the nanometer sized filters and not fully understood. We did not completely understand this procedure. So, therefore, using it is difficult in many situations. What are the other possible alternatives? One is desalination. For this desalination also we can use reverse osmosis. Next one is rainwater harvesting. So, rainwater can be converted into potable water easily than saline water being converted into potable water. So, rainwater harvesting should also be considered. Conclusion. The above technologies present viable solutions to address the global freshwater crisis, and follows. Now, moving on to the last question. This is about the asteroids. The question number 60. What are asteroids? How real is a threat of them causing extinction of the life? Can the asteroids really cause mass extinction of life on the earth? And what are the strategies have been developed to prevent such a catastrophe? Did I discuss this? As it is, yes, we have discussed this. DART mission, NASA's double asteroid, NASA's double asteroid redirection test. This is from the comprehensive course of science and technology. Okay, and if you observe this image, this is also from the comprehensive course of science and technology, which I just completed 2-3 days back. Okay, so here we can also observe the procedure, how to deflect the asteroid. But before we see how to deflect the asteroid, let us first try to understand what is asteroid. What is the chance of an asteroid hitting the earth? And if the asteroid hits the earth, is it having that much capacity of mass extinction of living organisms on the earth? Let us complete them all. First, asteroids. Okay, these are sometimes called as small planets, minor planets. They are rocky, airless remnants left over from the early formation of the solar system. Okay, they are rocky, they do not have the air, and they are the remnants of the initial formation of the solar system. Okay, about 4.6 billion years ago. Most of the asteroids, where do we find most of the asteroids? They can be found orbiting the sun between the Mars and Jupiter. Most of the, we call this as asteroid belt, okay, between the Mars and Jupiter, within the main asteroid belt. Although most asteroids pose no threat to the earth, they are far away from the earth, most of the asteroids do not pose any threat to the earth, but some of these asteroids follow the trajectories, that is the routes or the orbits that bring them close to our planet. Then we will have some threat due to the asteroids. Now we understood what are the asteroids. The threat of extinction from asteroid impacts. While asteroid impacts of this magnitude, which magnitude? A magnitude of causing mass extinction. Okay, can such a huge impact happen? While asteroid impacts of this magnitude are rare, that is a very huge asteroid hitting the earth so that a mass extinction of living organisms can happen is a very, very rare event. But they are not impossible. Okay, statistically when we see, the chance of small asteroids hitting the earth is more when compared to the chance of large asteroids hitting the earth. But if a small asteroid hits the earth, what is the advantage here is, okay, as the asteroid enters the earth's atmosphere, the earth's atmosphere is very dense. So this dense atmosphere will offer friction to the asteroid which is entering into the earth's atmosphere. This friction will create enormous amount of heat. That heat will burn that asteroid. So if a small asteroid hits the earth, comes close to the earth, we don't have a problem because of that, because it will be burnt as it enters into the earth's atmosphere. So we have problem only with the huge asteroids, but luckily the chance of a small asteroid hitting the ground is more when compared to the chance of a large asteroid. Okay, then so statistically impacts from smaller objects are more frequent but tend to burn up in the earth's atmosphere the moment they enter the earth's atmosphere. ISRO's chairman Dr. S. Somnath warned that asteroids larger than 300 meters have the potential to cause continental scale devastation. If the asteroid size is 300 meters or more, it can devastate an entire continent. Okay, and if it happens on some continent like Australia, we have some endemic species there like kangaroos and all. So it can lead to the total extinction of that species, global extinction of that species. Why? Because the species are confined to only Australia, like marsupials, like kangaroos and all, they are confined to only Australia, endemic species. So if an asteroid causes devastation of one whole continent, and if that happens to be a continent like Australia, there are many endemic species in that continent, it can lead to the global extinction of those species. Okay, but this is possible only if an asteroid which is 300 meters size, right? Okay, then The ISRO has issued a warning about a potentially hazardous asteroid called as Apophis. You all might have heard about it in the news. What is the context in which? What is the context in which this question appeared in 2024? Okay, because ISRO recently issued a warning that in the year 2029, a large asteroid called Apophis will be coming very close to the Earth. The chance of Apophis hitting the Earth is less, but still we should be prepared. Is it clear? This asteroid, named after the Egyptian god of chaos, okay, has garnered attention due to the massive size. Though the chance of it hitting the Earth is very less, due to its massive size, it is always better that we should be prepared for it. The ISRO's Network for Space Objects Tracking and Analysis, NETRA. The ISRO's Network for Space Objects Tracking and Analysis. What it will do? It will track and analyze the space objects. What are these space objects? They can be asteroids or man-made space junk, man-made space junk or space debris. So, NETRA will be tracking and analyzing the space debris or the space junk and also the asteroids. Okay. Then, past asteroid incidents. What are the asteroids that caused some considerable devastation on the Earth? One is in 2013, a 20-meter asteroid exploded over oblast in Russia, injuring 1,500 people and damaging thousands of buildings. If a 20-meter asteroid can do this, imagine the impact of a 300-meter asteroid. It has a potential of mass extinction. This cannot be called extinction because we have billions and trillions of people, and okay, like 1,500 cannot cause extinction of a species. Okay, but 300-meter asteroid can cause extinction. Okay, mass extinction of several species. The 1908, okay, Tunguska event caused by a 30-meter asteroid leveled 80 million trees in Siberia. Okay, again this is 30 meter. Then imagine the impact of a 300-meter sized asteroid. However, the most devastating asteroid impact occurred approximately 650 million years ago. We may think that it is a very large time gap, but when you see this astrologically, this is not very huge time gap. 650 million years is not a huge amount of time. Okay, when we see this in the context of the space-time fabric. Okay, years ago in Mexico, wiping out dinosaurs and also 70% of the Earth's species. 70% of the Earth's species, including dinosaurs, were wiped out because of this impact. But that occurred only 650 million years ago. 650 million years is too huge when you compare it with the lifespan of a human being. Okay, but it is not huge when you see this in the space-time context if you observe. Okay, right. And that is the reason why massive asteroids hitting the Earth is rare does not mean that it is on the whole rare. If you compare it with the human lifespan, it is very rare. It can happen once in a few hundreds of millions of years. That rare it is. Right. Next. Then what are the strategies developed to prevent this catastrophe? Let us see this one of the slides from the comprehensive course. So this is NASA's DART mission. Listen carefully. This is NASA's DART mission. DART is double asteroid, okay, redirection test. Double asteroid redirection test. Redirection means changing the direction of the asteroid. Okay, what asteroids we are discussing here? Okay, there are two asteroids here. One is Didymos, this bigger one, and the other one is Dimorphos. What was the original orbit? If you observe, this white color one is the original orbit. This one, this is the original orbit. Original orbit is close to the Earth. Original orbit is close to the Earth. And what does this DART mission will do? DART will go and hit this dimorphos and will move the dimorphos little bit close to, towards the Didymos. Close to Didymos, look at here, close to Didymos is away from the Earth, away from the Earth. So it means DART will hit that asteroid and will move it away from the Earth, so that the chance of that asteroid colliding with the Earth will be reduced. And another spacecraft called Lycia Cube, what is it? It is a camera. Okay, so this Lycia Cube will be taking the pictures of before the hit and after the hit, that is the dimorphos position before the DART mission hits it and the dimorphos position after the DART mission hits it. So this is one strategy. What are the potential strategies? This is deflection strategy. Several strategies have been proposed to prevent catastrophic collision with Earth. NASA successfully tested its double asteroid redirection test called DART mission, which demonstrated the possibility of changing an asteroid's course by directly impacting it with a spacecraft, directly hit it with a spacecraft, so that we can change its direction, we can change its route. Okay, this is one strategy as we have seen here. Okay, then next one is, already we have seen this ISRO's Netra. Netra will be tracking and analyzing asteroids and the man-made space debris and space junk. Okay, this analysis is very important. Through that analysis only we came to know that this Apophis may come close to the Earth in the year 2029. How did we know that it is coming close to Earth in 2029? By this analysis. That is the reason why the analysis is very important. Okay, next, OSIRIS-REx. Okay, this is also NASA's satellite. It was originally directed to a different asteroid, but because Apophis is coming close to the Earth, OSIRIS-REx is designed to return asteroid samples originally, but now it is been redirected to study the Apophis. NASA's OSIRIS-REx original intention is to collect the sample from a different asteroid, but now because Apophis is an immediate problem, NASA is planning to redirect the OSIRIS-REx to study the Apophis, how fastly it is coming, calculating the probability of it coming so close to the Earth, all these things. Additionally, European Space Agency ESA is considering launching rapid Apophis mission for security and safety, okay, to further understand the asteroid's trajectory. Okay, so Ramses in the year 2028. What is this? Rapid Apophis mission for security and safety. It will further analyze Apophis trajectory, Apophis route, how fastly it is coming, how closely it can come to the Earth. Okay, and next one, gravity tractors. For example, look at here, there is one asteroid here. Then what we do is, we keep a spacecraft like NASA's DART mission. This spacecraft is not hitting the asteroid, but it is kept close to it. So what happens? The spacecraft's gravitational force. The spacecraft's gravitational, what is this? This is something like a satellite. We launch a satellite. The satellite will go close to the asteroid. This is artificial satellite, spacecraft that we are launching. This spacecraft also will have some gravity. The spacecraft's gravity will pull this asteroid towards the spacecraft. So the asteroid will go close to the spacecraft and away from the Earth. It will go away from the Earth and close to the spacecraft. Simple. There is an asteroid and we launch a spacecraft or a satellite. It will go close to that asteroid and it will pull that asteroid towards its own self. It means away from the Earth. This is another strategy. So these are all the strategies we have to avoid the asteroid hitting the Earth if it really comes as close to the earth, okay, in the year 2029, Apophis asteroid, right? Okay, then, so with that we completed the 4 questions in science and technology, but okay, there is another question, question number 10. This question number 10 comes under the internal security, and also we have a technical aspect of it that we regularly discuss in the information and communication technology. What is the question? That is Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Digital Personal Data Protection Act. This slide is also from the recently completed comprehensive course on science and technology. Digital Personal Data Protection Act, and what is the context, okay, as it is, background of this is also discussed, background, how it developed, how it came into being, and what is the purpose of this Digital Data Protection Act, okay, and we have discussed this both in internal security, in our regular courses and current affairs classes, and in our comprehensive courses we have also discussed this in the science and technology courses. That is the security aspects of it discussed in internal security, and the technical aspects of it discussed in information and communication technology as a part of our comprehensive science and technology course. So with this we completed the discussion of science and technology questions from 2024 mains. Thank you and all the best.